Chapter 1511. In fact, they had already reached their limit when Chen Hao had finished tempering them. The only reason they had stayed here was to wait for the others to finish. Therefore, they were not in a hurry to trigger the heavenly punishment. Moreover, after stepping into the Hongmeng domain, Chen Hao had gone against his principle of don't attack unless you attack me. He had taken the initiative to provoke the spirits of all living things in the Hongmeng domain. In just 100 years, he had swept through the Hongmeng domain. All the spirits of all living things that had stepped into the Hongmeng domain were either killed, or had their souls planted with seeds of faith, by Chen Hao and pledged their allegiance to him. The women, Qingyang, Ningjing, Aoqian, Lingfeng, and the others had all obtained godheads that had been tempered by Chen Hao. Everyone's strength had improved tremendously. Chen Hao had originally planned to give Chen Nan, Pan Long, and the others the godheads he had tempered after leaving this place. Unfortunately, there had been a change before he could do so. Crack, crack, heaven and earth shook, tribulation clouds formed, and the heavenly punishment descended. The women triggered the heavenly punishment one by one. The Milky Way tunnel descended, and they returned to the chaotic universe. Earth, Earth, we're going to Earth. They had eagerly entered the immortal realm space. As expected, they had received news that Chen Hao had returned to Earth. There was no doubt that this was a shocking piece of news. After a brief silence, their fighting spirit was reignited. Everyone knew that Chen Hao would leave this time. When they met again, it would be countless times longer than before. It would take at least tens of thousands of years. The most likely scenario was that they would meet again on the path to becoming an immortal emperor. This meant that they would have to at least ascend to the seventh heaven of the Cutting Dao true immortal realm, and embark on the path to becoming an immortal emperor. The road ahead was long, and they could only cultivate. Fortunately, they could still communicate through the immortal realm space, so they were not completely isolated. Phew. 3,000 years, but it's only a moment. In the immortal realm space, Chen Hao, who was in the greater thousand world on Earth, opened a cave abode on a towering mountain peak. Surrounded by endless Tao laws and immortal light, he slowly opened his eyes. His aura had already risen to that of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. The Yin and Yang deities indeed promote and restrict each other. When the Yang deity steps into the Supreme of Hongmeng, the hidden deity only needs to meditate to achieve it. However, after reaching the balance of Yin and Yang, the progress will slow down. However, the time spent is nothing to me. It seems that although the macro world in my mind is abnormal, it still can't compare with the spatial laws of the immortal realm. To be exact, they are not on the same level. This is a little strange. The macro world in Chen Hao's mind already had all the features of a real vast thousand worlds, and it even had a small immortal realm. According to the memories he had obtained from the many godheads, Chen Hao knew that even if the space in his mind was not as big as the immortal realm, the gap would not be too big. Moreover, with the passage of time and the improvement of his realm, Chen Hao believed that the small immortal realm, in his mind, would one day grow into a real immortal realm. However, the space-time laws of the immortal realm were still 100 times that of the macro world in his mind. It was no different from the great world of Xiandi and the ancient chaos vast thousand worlds. This was enough to show that for the immortal realm, Chen Hao's macro world in his mind, the ancient chaos vast thousand worlds, and the great world of Xiandi were no different. It was only because its realm completely surpassed theirs that it could achieve the equal space-time law multiplication. The space-time laws of Chen Hao's macro world in his mind were more than 100,000 times that of the great world of Xiandi. After Chen Hao stepped into the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, the space-time laws had increased from more than 30,000 times to more than 100,000 times. The space in the immortal realm was also 100 times that of Chen Hao's macro world in his mind. This meant that Chen Hao had cultivated in the immortal realm for 3,000 years, but in reality, only about a day had passed. Ding! Suddenly, a crisp notification sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Chen Hao, your concept of relative time is wrong. Yang Liuyan's emotionless voice rang out. Wrong. Chen Hao was not surprised at all. Obviously, he was used to Yang Liuyan taking the initiative to remind him. Yes. Whether you're in the great world of Xiandi, the ancient chaos vast thousand worlds, or the vast thousand worlds in your mind, The real time is based on the space you're in. In other words, in these 3,000 years, the immortal realm calculated that you've spent 3 years in the real world. In the real world, reaching the 7th heaven of cutting Dao true immortal within 100,000 years is based on this calculation. Oh, if that's the case, then it doesn't matter. It's just a calculation. The real time I've spent in the ancient chaos vast thousand worlds is only a day, right? Yes. That's good. Thank you, Yin Yan. Yes. Sensing that Yang Liuyan's divine sense had disappeared, Chunhao's lips curled into a smile. He knew very well that this was a wisp of divine sense that Yang Liuyan had deliberately left for him. However, it did not have all of Yang Liuyan's consciousness. It was just following Yang Liuyan's settings and carrying out the task mechanically. However, this was Yang Liuyan's divine sense after all. After Chunhao's vast thousand worlds in his mind had been completely formed, he had a new understanding of life. Coupled with his previous scientific research and the experience of the birth of little wisdom, spiritual intelligence, Chunhao was confident that he could cultivate it. Now her gratitude for his nonsense and her response of yes was an obvious improvement. Now it seems that it is indeed as Yang Liuyan said. The spirits of all things in the vast thousand worlds on earth were born earlier, and it is much stronger than the ancient chaos vast thousand worlds, and the great world of Xiandi. It is more suitable for me. I hope it won't affect me much. Before returning to Earth, I have to reach the peak of the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm. This time, I'll take the lead with the Yin God. However, I have to refine Su Junfeng and Su Wenqing's divinity first. Chunhao had previously suppressed Su Junfeng and Su Wenqing's divinity with the help of the old god. Now that he had stepped into the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, although he had lost the old god, he still had the confidence to refine Su Junfeng and Su Wenqing's divinity. Needless to say, Su Wenqing was in existence second only to the celestial Arch. Although Su Junfeng's strength was not as strong as Su Wenqing's, Chunhao could feel that Su Junfeng's divinity seemed to have a stronger protection. It was definitely more difficult to refine than Su Wenqing's divinity. Su Junfeng's protection seems to be the celestial Thearcha's protection. There is no other possibility. Perhaps this guy is a direct descendant of the celestial Arch? That's possible. Chunhao did not think that he was the reincarnation of the celestial Arch. Although Su Wenqing's speculation was reasonable, Chunhao himself knew that the flower of 7 emotions and 6 desires was indeed a unique skill that he had comprehended in battle. Moreover, it was based on the Red Dust Heart Sutra, and not an inherited unique skill. It doesn't matter. I'll refine it first. Chunhao urged his mind and began to refine it. Chapter 15:12. The blue planet slowly rotated in an unchanging pattern, day after day, year after year. Compared to the countless planets, it was very small. It was so small that the cultivators of the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland could destroy it thousands of times with a casual punch, fly around it countless times in a breath, and explore every corner of it with a single thought. But this was only relative to its size. Once a cultivator approached it within a certain range, he would find that the energy of heaven and earth was suddenly sucked out, and it would become an existence like a silent space. What was more frightening was that no matter how strong one's cultivation was, or how profound one's understanding of the laws of heaven and earth was, once one stepped on its surface, everything would be out of one's control. One's vital essence would be suppressed thousands of times, one's supernatural power would lose its effect, and one's perception would be restricted thousands of times. The restriction of the laws of heaven. Unless one's understanding of the laws of heaven and earth had surpassed its supreme laws, one would not be able to break its shackles. Since ancient times, countless powerful people had originated from this small planet. Over the years, even if the creatures living on it had become ordinary people, they had also lost their ancient cultivation heritage and developed towards technology. To a real cultivator, they were nothing but ants. But so far, no one from outer space had been able to control it or destroy it. In ancient legends, it was the first heaven and earth to be born in the endless galaxy. In ancient times it had a name, Planet Xiuan. Now it had a new name, Earth. Nowadays, people on Earth were equipped with technology, and there were no more miracles. Those myths and legends left behind, in the minds of most people, were just myths made up by novelists. Even if there were miraculous phenomena, they would be misinterpreted by some ridiculous so-called scientists, such as waterspouts, tornadoes, air pressure differences, and so on. It was the biggest joke in the world. A small number of people still persisted in their beliefs, whether it was bystanders or believers themselves. Perhaps more of them were looking for spiritual sustenance. Did immortals, gods, and Buddhas really exist? This might be the question in the hearts of every person on Earth. The unearthed ancient sword, buried underground for thousands of years, was still very sharp. When the sword was unsheathed, it shone with cold light, without any rust. The blade was thin and sharp, and it cut through more than 20 layers of paper. After thousands of years, why did it not rust? Even the modern lathe technology could not achieve this casting process. Of course, it couldn't be realized because it wasn't a product of technology. This was just one of the situations that science on Earth could not explain. There were more discoveries that surpassed the knowledge of humans on Earth, such as craniotomy from tens of thousands of years ago on Earth, wonderful but accurate ancient maps, countless metal smelting techniques of unknown origins, and all kinds of knowledge. In the age of impossibility, something happened that science thought was impossible. How could it be explained by so-called science? The birth and brilliant achievements of the mad scientist Li Yuan had, to a certain extent, changed the perception of the people on Earth. Even though he had been gone for nearly 100 years due to an accident in an experiment, his influence still spread to every corner of the Earth, especially in China. In almost every domain, there was a statue to commemorate him. He was a great man. Since ancient times, he was the only great man who could be revered by every country and every race in the world. He was the pioneer of a new era on Earth. He was a new legend. Because of Li Yuan's late theory, the current Earth began to pay attention to life science and vigorously research the stimulation and training of human potential. Some ancient books that were unearthed, some cultivation methods that were once abandoned by the world, especially the ancient martial arts of Wuxia, Taoist cultivation methods, and Buddhist cultivation methods, began to become popular. What surprised the world was that there was actually an improvement. Even though it could be said that only 1 in 10,000 people could achieve it, it proved that these pseudoscience, which was previously regarded as dregs, really existed and had great power. The human will exists and can produce power. Just like radio signals and other signals, who could detect its existence in ancient times. The definition of science was broadened. Qi. A resplendent ray of light suddenly appeared in space. Soon after, a figure appeared under the vast starry sky. Soon after, a ray of light flashed between the eyebrows of the figure, and a graceful figure appeared. The moon Earth. I'm back. I didn't expect that I would really come back, and now. Chen Hao stared at the moon and the blue earth that were slowly growing larger in his eyes. Even though his state of mind had reached an extremely high level, at this moment, his emotions were fluctuating. In his previous life he was a cold orphan with no family, love, or even friendship. He had always thought that his feelings for Earth were just that. However, when he really came back, he had to admit that this was his first home after all. The hometowns of Wuxia were very complicated, and the mad scientist Li Yuan was no exception. This is the moon and Earth. Brother Hao, at this moment is this what we have seen before? The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is so weak, and it's rapidly decreasing. Brother Hao, I have a feeling that I'm going to be sealed. Lu Hui, who was snuggling up to Chen Hao like a little bird, looked at the scene in front of her and sensed the aura around her as she spoke softly. Her voice was also excited. However, there was a trace of worry in her voice. It was as if a big hand had appeared in the dark, and she felt a great pressure on her soul. Seal. Is there? Chen Hao was slightly surprised and asked in return. You don't feel it? No, it's just that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is rapidly decreasing. Chen Hao said truthfully. He did not feel that he was being sealed, and similarly he did not notice anything unusual. Strange, I feel that this should be the suppression of the heavenly axiom. Could it be that it only affects outsiders? You're an earthling, so you won't be affected? Lu Hui asked. Chen Hao pondered for a moment, but he did not know what was going on. Logically speaking, if there was a special situation, Yang Luyan should have mentioned it to him, but she did not. Earth is a magical planet, and the moon is not simple either. I don't know either. Let's wait and see, Chen Hao said. At that moment, the two of them had just ejected themselves from the Milky Way tunnel. Their inertia meant that they were rapidly approaching the moon. The starry sky was beautiful, and it was the future that he and Lu Hui had seen. This made Chen Hao feel that the moon was the gateway to Earth. Oh, is there really Chang'e on the moon? Hee, now we can see for ourselves. You even suspected that I was her reincarnation. The young nurse Lu Hui laughed. At that moment, she had obtained the memories of Earth from Chen Hao, and she was very familiar with the situation on Earth. Chapter 15-13. It's not just my initial suspicion. What do you mean? Brother Hao, don't tell me you're still suspicious? The past, present, and future are all contained in cause and effect. Since we saw the future scene related to the moon and Earth, how can we completely deny that you have nothing to do with the moon? After all, what we saw back then was the dark side of the moon, so it can't be my past. It can only be the future, that one of us, or both of us triggered at the same time. Even Li Yuan had never seen the dark side of the moon. He only knew about it from satellite pictures. Why was the dark side of the moon densely packed with craters, but the front was as flat as a mirror? Why were the craters of the same depth regardless of their size? The sun's gravitational force on the moon was 54 times that of Earth's, but why was the moon still orbiting Earth obediently and becoming Earth's satellite? As Earth's satellite, the moon was so far away that it had to be captured by Earth. However, it was surprisingly large, and it was orbiting Earth in a circular orbit. That was too unimaginable. Unless the moon was voluntarily captured by Earth, it was impossible. Looking at the moon from Earth, it looked about the same size as the sun, but in reality, the difference between the two was huge. The reason for this illusion was the strange arrangement of the distance. No matter how big the craters on the dark side of the moon were, their depth was almost the same. Most of them were between 4 to 6 kilometers. Some craters were more than 160 kilometers in diameter, but their depth was only 2 to 3 kilometers, almost the same as a crater about 10 kilometers in diameter. Why was that? Could it be that the meteorites that hit the moon had the same force regardless of their size? But that was impossible in nature. So-called science could not explain the moon's existence from its natural state. In the past, Li Yuan could not explain it either. The only reasonable guess back then was that the moon was an alien spacecraft. That was the only way to explain many of the above problems. However, Chen Hao could think of countless possibilities now. For example, the moon was condensed by a powerful protective barrier, so no matter how powerful the meteorites were, they could only leave marks on the surface. As for why it was orbiting Earth obediently, it was a protective barrier refined by a powerful person for Earth, and so on. It was much simpler to explain it with the law of magic. The current Chen Hao was no longer the same person as before. So-called science was just a shackle of thought. Oh, you have a point, but my intuition is wrong. Really? You don't feel anything? Chen Hao asked. Under normal circumstances, if Lu Hui was related to the moon, then as we approached the moon, we would more or less feel something. For example, when we saw a stranger for the first time, we would feel as if we had seen that stranger before. When we arrived at a certain place for the first time, we would feel as if we had been there before. When we did something with someone, we would feel as if we had been there before, and so on. Sometimes, this déjà vu feeling wasn't an illusion from our memories. It was an awakening from our previous lives and the influence of karma. If Lu Hui really didn't feel anything, then it might really have nothing to do with the moon. No, Lu Hui answered affirmatively. Then it really doesn't matter. This is a bit strange, seeing the future for no reason. Forget it, we're almost there. Brother Hao, I can't hold on much longer. Can't do it? Is the suppression that strong? Chen Hao was slightly surprised to see Lu Hui's aura rapidly weakening. However, he still did not show any reaction. That's strange. Try staying away from the moon. Okay. No. As expected. This means that under normal circumstances, Cultivators who come from the Milky Way tunnel are usually suppressed and can only land on the moon. Maybe you're the only one who's suppressed. Are you like me? That's impossible. If that's the case, it's impossible for there to be no miracles on Earth for so many years. This means that maybe I'm special and not suppressed. Hug me, I can't do it anymore. When they were still 1,000 miles away from the surface of the moon, Lu Hui grabbed Chen Hao's arm tightly and said. At this moment, the suppression on her strength suddenly increased by more than 10,000 times. In an instant, she felt as if she had become immortal and could no longer use any power. She could not even maintain the most basic balance of flight. She felt that if she fell freely like this, she would probably be smashed to pieces. Chen Hao hugged Lu Hui's waist. With a thought, he turned into a stream of light and broke away from the drive of inertia. Like cotton fluttering in the wind, he gently landed on the bumpy surface of the moon. Immediately, Chen Hao disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he had already brought Lu Hui into a ring-shaped mountain. Lu Hui's face turned pale. What a strong shielding ability, what a strong Dao mark. Little Hui, you go in first, Chen Hao said in surprise. At the same time, he directly took Lu Hui into his mind world. Lu Hui, whose strength was almost completely suppressed, could not hold on for long under the pressure of the powerful Dao mark. No wonder I failed to explore this place back then. This is not something that mortals can sense. Such an ancient aura is still operating perfectly. It can even be self-sufficient in the energy of heaven and earth. It's really amazing. Chen Hao could not help but be shocked. When he was outside the ring-shaped mountain, although his abnormal perception ability had sensed the fluctuations of the divine ability law, he did not expect the Dao marks in these ring-shaped mountain to be so strong. Just by the aura, Chen Hao could be sure that these Dao marks had existed for an unimaginable long time. These are just a few Dao marks that were exposed after the impact of the meteorite destroyed the ground. This is 5,000 meters deep. My divine sense can only penetrate 10,000 meters. What a strong protection. Could this moon be Earth's protective magic treasure? Chen Hao thought to himself. Almost all the ring-shaped mountains were created by the impact of the meteorite. But no matter how big the diameter of the ring-shaped mountain was, their depth was about the same. Almost all of them were concentrated at a depth of 4,000 to 5,000 meters. There were almost none that exceeded 7,000 meters, not to mention 10,000 meters. Chen Hao's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. Immediately, his figure kept changing among the ring-shaped mountains. After continuously investigating 100 of them, Chen Hao stopped and said to himself, sure enough, the deeper it is, the stronger the Dao marks exposed. And the material on the moon's surface has a natural divine ability shielding effect. You're wrong. It's not natural. Who? Chen Hao was shocked. Who are you, sir? To be able to come here and not be suppressed by the heavenly Dao. You're the first person in 1,000 years. And you've just stepped into the ranks of Daoyuo Jingxian. He could only hear the voice but not see the person. And Chen Hao could not locate the source at all. Daoyuo Jingxian? I'm clearly the supreme of Hongmeng. Chen Hao was puzzled. Chapter 15:14. Supreme Hongmeng? Your aura is clearly Daoyuo Jingxian's. After hearing Chen Hao's words, the ethereal voice was obviously very surprised. How is that possible? Comprehending Hongmeng Qi and condensing the embryonic form of the mind's big world. Isn't that Supreme Hongmeng? Chen Hao asked doubtfully. Although he could not lock onto the other party's position, he did not sense the other party's hostility for the time being, so Chen Hao was not worried about anything. Yes, could it be that you have comprehended it? Why can't old man sense it? The voice said again. I can't sense it either. You're neither a man nor a woman. Could it be that you have a magic weapon that can disguise your aura? Suddenly, another voice came out, startling Chen Hao again. This was obviously another person's voice, but Chen Hao still could not lock onto the other party's position. However, what shocked Chen Hao the most was the other party's words. Who are you saying is neither a man nor a woman? Of course I'm talking about you. You obviously have a primordial body, but you speak in a man's voice. Primordial body? Humph. Chen Hao was stunned and immediately said angrily. Your sensing ability is not good, And your eyes are also blind? Which part of me is not a man in your eyes? Come out if you have the guts. I promise I won't beat you to death. And the one who spoke just now, are you all cowards? Coward your head. If I could come out, I would have come out long ago. My sensing ability is not good? Don't tell me you don't have a primordialine body. Although I have been asleep for hundreds of millions of years, my brain is not damaged. How can I not recognize the aura of a primordialine body? The voice that spoke later said, That's right. Don't think you can hide from our senses by pretending to be a man. Ha! The first voice chimed in, but before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly exclaimed, What? The second voice was also surprised. What's going on? At the same time, Chen Hao suddenly turned his eyes to look at his eyebrows in shock. An extremely resplendent light uncontrollably gushed out from between Chen Hao's eyebrows. At the same time, Chen Hao felt an extremely terrifying fluctuation in his mind. Even though he did not feel any pain, he felt as if his soul was about to be torn apart. It was as if something in his soul was about to be separated from him. Ah, is it? Fuck. A moment later, something that shocked Chen Hao even more happened. In the macro world in his mind, the endless divine qi, Hongming qi, and the energy of heaven and earth suddenly became uncontrollable and crazily disappeared from the macro world in his mind. The terrifying speed was simply too fast for Chen Hao to resist or stop. All of his senses disappeared, and he could no longer feel the fluctuation of his own energy, nor the existence of the space in his mind. There was only the terrible suppression of the way of heaven. What was more frightening was that Chen Hao's own feelings had also undergone a great change, as if the feeling after the awakening of the unique skill had completely disappeared. Even the state of mind and will that had changed since then had disappeared. The only thing that Chen Hao could be sure of was that at this moment, he was more like himself. He had a very clear feeling and a feeling of complete control. However, at this time, before he had time to think about it, Chen Hao's eyes widened as he looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar figure that had appeared in front of him out of thin air. It was familiar because this figure's appearance was exactly the same as Long Ting's, but her aura and temperament were completely different from Long Ting's. They clearly had the same eyebrows, eyes, nose, mouth, face shape, and figure, but it gave Chen Hao a completely different feeling. Beauty was beyond doubt, especially at this moment when she was smiling sweetly and staring at him. Moreover, she was right in front of him, so beautiful that Chen Hao felt a little suffocated. However, what really shocked Chen Hao was that when his eyes met the other party's eyes, he actually felt as if he could see through and be seen through at a glance. Their hearts were connected, and there was not the slightest bit of barrier between them. Even if this was Long Ting, who had gone through the fusion of yin and yang, she would not be able to reach such a realm. However, the figure in front of him had reached. Although the time was short, the clever Chen Hao knew who this figure was even if he used his but to think. This was one of the main purposes of his return to Earth. He originally thought that he would have to go through a search, and it was unknown whether he would be able to find her or not. However, now she had actually appeared in front of him like this. What was even more exaggerated was that she had been pulled out of his mind and soul. Yixian. The naked corpse that Chen Hao had once discovered in the depths of the sea was believed by Chen Hao, who was also the mad scientist Li Yuan, to be a 10,000-year-old ancient corpse. However, he was unable to communicate with her. How could she be in his mind? How could she merge with him so perfectly that he could not sense it at all? So she has always been here. Could the so-called mysterious magical weapon be her? Chen Hao could not help but secretly guess. No. Yixian seemed to have read Chen Hao's mind directly. She smiled slightly and gazed at Chen Hao affectionately. She said softly, "It is it and I am me. However, it is still under my control, and is still my magical weapon. Most of what Old God once told you is correct. However, Old God is only its guardian and does not know the specifics. Are you really Yixian?" "Yes, Hao." Chen Hao was a little dumbfounded. This form of address seemed very intimate. How could it be like this? Although Chen Hao had a feeling that he could see through her and had a telepathic connection, he had no choice but to numb himself at this moment. A man and a woman. I see. The woman's aura has blocked the man's aura. This kid is indeed the supreme of Hongmeng. However, he has been suppressed by the heavenly Tao, so we can only sense the woman's aura. The one who has not been suppressed is this woman, Dao Yuo Jingxian. However, what a powerful aura. Not bad. Very powerful indeed. Little girl, could it be that you were sent by the eldest daughter of the Yang family? The two voices were shocked. One person's aura had completely covered the other's aura. Furthermore, it was here. They could not help but be shocked. One had to know that this was their territory. The eldest daughter of the Yang family? Yang Luyan. Chen Hao and Yi Xian said at the same time. Yi Xian even directly said Yang Luyan's name, which made Chen Hao frown slightly. It was obvious that Yi Xian knew everything about him. At the same time, Chen Hao was also slightly shocked. What kind of existence was Yang Luyan? However, Yang Luyan had not discovered Yi Xian's existence in his mind back then. Of course, Chen Hao knew that this must be the effect of it. This also meant that it was much more powerful than he had imagined. However, at this moment, Chen Hao could only forcefully suppress the many doubts in his heart. It seems so. Moreover, your relationship is not shallow. No wonder you are not affected by the heavenly Tao. The two voices said. Those who knew Yang Luyan and dared to call out her name were naturally not ordinary people. They were most likely Yang Luyan's friends. Chapter 15:15. Yi Xian and Chen Hao didn't deny it. Although they weren't sent by Yang Luyan, there was no need to deny it. After all, they hadn't figured out what kind of existences they were. At this moment, Chen Hao was still being suppressed by the heavenly Tao. Yi Xian still had a faint and sweet smile on her face. After glancing at Chen Hao, she asked, "Who are you?" "Guardians who atone for their crimes by meritorious service. I hope you can put in a few good words for us in front of Mississippi. You want to enter Earth and become immortal, right? As the origin planet of our chaotic space, the effect of becoming immortal here is 100 times better than that of other worlds. We'll send you there now. However, you too must be careful. Many spirits of all living things on Earth have awakened. Although they are being suppressed by the heavenly Tao, some of them are even older than the two of us. They are quickly breaking through the suppression of the heavenly Tao, and their strength is getting stronger and stronger. If Miss hadn't left a message before she left, and left behind a new law to restrict people from acting recklessly in the secular world, the secular world would have been finished by now. Also, the Hongmeng domain of the cultivation world has recovered. Many spirits of all living things have advanced to the supreme level of Hongmeng. You too should be careful. Okay, thank you for the reminder. I'll have to trouble you too," Chen Hao said. At this moment, Chen Hao was completely suppressed by the heavenly Tao. It was just like when he first encountered the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing. He had a lot of magical powers, but he couldn't use them at all. Fortunately, Chen Hao's abnormal physical body still gave Chen Hao strong support and confidence. Similarly, the words of the two voices made Chen Hao slightly excited. Until now, Chen Hao had to admit that he was the kind of battle maniac whose bones were filled with battle intent. Ever since he came out of the immortal emperor's boundless world, he had not met a worthy opponent in the primal chaos and ancient chaos. Previously, Yang Luyan had suggested that he return to Earth. Now, with the reminder of these two voices, Chen Hao was certain that this time, in the Earth's boundless world, or in other words, in the cultivation world of Earth, a strong opponent would appear. The days of loneliness were finally coming to an end. Even though he was being suppressed by the heaven Tao at this moment, even though he'd once thought that it was because his mental state and will had been completely extracted, and even that it didn't belong to him, Chen Hao wasn't afraid at all. Conversely, after Yi Xian stepped foot out of his body, it allowed him to have the feeling that he was truly in control of his own destiny. This was his true self, and he didn't have to worry that he wouldn't be his current self any longer. You are the first Miss Friends, so there's no need to be so polite. May I know your names? I am Chen Hao. Chen Hao said in a deep voice. I'm his Tao companion Yi Xian, Yi Xian said directly. Yi Xian's words once again rendered Chen Hao speechless. Was this really all right? Was it really possible? No matter what, she was still her. But at this time, Chen Hao naturally couldn't refute. Moreover, he couldn't reveal any abnormalities and let the other party see any flaws. May I know who the two of you are? Chen Hao asked deliberately. From the information revealed by the two of them, it seemed that they should be old guys who had existed for a very long time. Therefore, Chen Hao wanted to verify whether they were existences in the myths and legends of Earth. We don't deserve to be called seniors. It's fine if we don't mention our names. Just call us protectors. Alright, Brother Chen, Miss Yi, please. Unfortunately, what disappointed Chen Hao was that the two of them were obviously unwilling to reveal their true identities. Can't we go by ourselves? Chen Hao glanced at Yi Xian and asked. Although he was being suppressed by the Heaven Dao, Yi Xian wasn't. In the past, with Yi Xian's cultivation in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, it would only take a moment to travel from the moon to Earth. No, the moon is the entrance to Earth, but it's only the first barrier. If you go directly, you'll be directly attacked by the second barrier. With your realm, you won't be able to withstand it. Qi. Following the old man's words, a milky white beam of light suddenly poured down from the void and enveloped Chen Hao and Yi Xian. It was also at this moment that what made Chen Hao slightly nervous and unnatural was that Yi Xian actually lightly held onto his arm as if she was his Dao companion. Naturally, her beautiful face rose slightly, and she still carried a faint and slightly sweet smile. Buzz. Immediately after, Chen Hao and Yi Xian felt their bodies tremble as they instantly landed in a huge ring-shaped mountain. The endless Dao mark pressure actually automatically parted in all directions, making way for Chen Hao and Yi Xian. Chen Hao felt as if he was quickly descending into a bottomless black hole. As far as his eyes could see, other than the endless Dao mark runes, there seemed to be extremely terrifying ferocious beasts sealed in the pitch-black barrier. There were those as huge as mountains, those as thin as monkeys, those so ugly that people didn't dare to look at them directly, those so beautiful that people would feel tender affection for them. There were countless of them. Although most of their auras were sealed, the little bit that leaked out made Chen Hao feel an aura that was even more violent than ancient ferocious beasts. There was clearly no sound, but the sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling in his heart. If not for Chen Hao's transcendent state of mind, he would have been bewitched. Even Yi Xian, after a short period of time, was in a state where she kept her head down and her nose down. This made Chen Hao a little surprised. She had clearly removed that powerful state of mind and will that didn't belong to her, so why did it seem like she was inferior to him? If normal people want to step onto Earth, they have to pass through this demon sealing cave. Different realms have different levels of entry. Since we're sending the two of you over, we'll naturally let you enter the highest level and let you see. These are all super ferocious beasts from other chaotic worlds. They were all captured and sealed by our Master of Chaos. The old man's voice sounded. Chen Hao and Yi Xian were filled with questions. Who was the Master of Chaos? However, they couldn't ask. After all, they were Yang Liuyan's friends. How could they not know? Chen Hao and Yi Xian speculated that it should be related to Yang Liuyan. The biggest possibility was that Yang Liuyan had mentioned her father. Look at this heart-devouring beast. Although it's only the size of an ant, if the seal is removed, even an ordinary heavenly venerable wouldn't be its match. It's that strong. Chen Hao said in surprise. That sparkling little dot was really like an ant, but it had the strength of a heavenly venerable. This was indeed a little exaggerated. Look at this blue-blooded blue-eyed tiger. Its strength is comparable to a celestial emperor. A celestial emperor. Isn't that the master of the celestial realm? When did it become so cheap? Chen Hao said to himself. This is the blood-sucking scourge. A drop of blood can make a heavenly venerable reborn and improve their physical body. The surging blood qi, even in the terrifying seal, made Chen Hao feel shocked. What kind of concept would it be if it was released? Along the way, the two guardians kept introducing the two of them. Chen Hao and Yi Xian were shocked to the core. This also made Chen Hao realize how terrifying Earth was. As the origin star of this chaotic space, the celestial realm was nothing in front of it. Of course, this referred to the seal protecting Earth. Chapter 15-16. These are the existences that protect Earth. Of course. However, these are only the most superficial existences. As the planet of origin, Earth has too many secrets. For countless eras, Countless powerful beings have more or less left something on Earth. There are too many secrets on Earth, including the cultivation world on Earth. Almost all of them exist in a world within a world. The phrase "a grain of sand is a world" can't really be achieved anywhere else, but it can be used to describe Earth. Even our Master of Chaos can't completely discover the existence of a world within a world on Earth. It's impossible for any place to not have something that you can't discover. So powerful. That's the truth. Therefore, even the eldest young lady has stayed on Earth for a very long time. Moreover, our Master of Chaos will also come to Earth whenever he has free time. Oh, Earth is so powerful and mysterious. It's incredible. Once you step onto Earth, we won't be able to help you much. Everything will depend on yourselves. Unless you awaken the ability to fly to the moon, you won't be able to leave in a short period of time. After Miss Yi enters Earth, I'm afraid she'll be sealed as well. Be careful. Okay, thank you both. Buzz. Immediately, Chen Hao and Yi Xian felt the space tremble. The aura around them suddenly changed. The two of them appeared in a brightly lit city. The location where they appeared was actually the top of a skyscraper. What a familiar aura. Earth, I'm finally back. I'm actually back here. Chen Hao didn't need to look carefully at all. With just a glance, he knew which city he was in and which building he was standing on. Wind and Cloud Building in the capital of Wuxia. Where is this? Yi Xian still stuck to him. She raised her pretty face, affectionately, and stared at Chen Hao as she asked. Without waiting for Chen Hao to answer, she whispered, I'm also suppressed. This is Wuxia, the source of Earth's ancient mythological era. Earth is the planet of origin, and Wuxia is the birthplace of the planet of origin. And this building is my residence in the capital. Chen Hao's gaze was unhurried as he looked down at the bustling city. As he spoke, he sat on the spotless wooden chair beside him, and gently pressed a button on the side of the chair. It automatically and slowly began to rotate. In this way, the entire night scene of the capital flowed slowly through his eyes. In the past, as long as he returned to the capital, he would definitely stay here quietly at night. Perhaps he would just sit there in a daze, or perhaps he would kick and punch on the roof. No one knew what he was feeling. Was it the loneliness of being at the top and being as lonely as snow? Or was it driven by the desire to look down on the world and have everything under control? Even he himself couldn't explain it clearly. He, who was cold and ruthless and pursued immortality, liked the feeling of being here. Fengyan Tower. Chen Hao murmured as he slowly rotated and looked at the bright lights around him. As he spoke, he seemed to have forgotten Yi Xian's existence and began to talk to himself. I didn't expect that the landing point of my teleportation would be here. I began to practice martial arts here, starting from Tai Chi, followed by 8 extremities fist, 5 animal frolics, Shaolin muscle bone strengthening scripture, 2 finger zen, golden bell shield iron shirt. Perhaps this is where most of my imprints are condensed? Tens of thousands of years have passed since the laws of time and space are different. How many years have passed here? It seems that it hasn't been that long. Although Fengyan Tower was no longer the tallest building in the capital of Wuxia, it was still one of the tallest buildings. At least there was nothing in the vicinity that could block the view. Moreover, although the facilities and decorations on the roof had traces of time and were more historical, they hadn't changed much. At most a few hundred years? Chen Hao's fingers habitually tapped on the armrest of the chair, with a special rhythm. Perhaps it was because of his habitual action that the chair made of top-grade Wangwali was obviously much brighter than other places under his fingers. It was sparkling and translucent, overflowing with precious light. Someone broke in? Fell from the sky. What Chen Hao didn't know was that the 24-hour all-weather monitoring center downstairs had already sent out an alarm at the first moment, transmitting the information of his and Yi Xian's appearance to an old man living in the building. The old man's eyes widened in shock the moment he saw the image and stopped the arrest order he had issued at the first moment. All movements became still. The old man quietly looked at the surveillance image displayed in the holographic image. All the people on standby, or inhuman, looked at the old man with eyes full of awe and doubt. They had already seen the fate of the 2 people who appeared on the roof. Even if they flew here, they could only face the same result, which was to disappear from this world. Because for so many years no one had been able to set foot on that place, not even close. Except for the old man who personally cleaned it once a day. But someone actually dared to set foot on it, and sat on the chair that even the old man didn't dare to sit on. Not to mention two young people. Even if it was the most important person on earth, the old man wouldn't let it go. They had already seen the outcome of the two people, and felt a little regretful because the man was really very handsome, and the woman was really very beautiful. They had never seen such beautiful people. Even if they were recognized as the most handsome and beautiful celebrity, at this moment, they felt that in front of these two people, they were nothing but dog shit. But the old man actually stopped their actions, and his agitated look surprised everyone. This was a situation that had never happened before. Could it be that the old man knew this handsome man and beautiful woman? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Is this real? After a moment, the old man's gaze focused on Chen Hao's gently tapping fingers. He murmured with tears flowing down his old face, "Master, it's you, it's really you. In this world, except for little Wang, no one knows about your habitual movements. You must be back. It must be. Little Wang knew that you wouldn't die. You wouldn't. Haha, master, you're really back. Isn't she what she used to be? When you first found her, you showed little Wang her photo." The old man's muttering made the people around him dumbfounded, and their brains short-circuited. Master, little Wang? Was this possible? The old man's surname was Wang, and this little Wang was obviously calling himself Little Wang. This old man who could deter the world actually called himself Little Wang? Who would believe it? But they really saw it and believed it because the old man mentioned his master. Who was the old man's master? Until now, there were statues of him erected in the highest palaces of countless domains. The mad scientist, Li Yuan. The old man was the manager of the mad scientist Li Yuan's wind and cloud building in the capital. He was also his only close secretary, responsible for Li Yuan's daily life and so on. There was no doubt that he was Li Yuan's trusted aide. But was this possible? It had been more than 800 years. Chapter 15-17. 831 years ago, when the mad scientist Li Yuan was carrying out the most cutting-edge experiment that no one had been able to surpass, an accident occurred. His strongest laboratory turned into nothingness, but miraculously, no life was harmed. Only the mad scientist Li Yuan, his research subject, the mysterious female corpse, and the strongest genetic baby boy that he had cultivated disappeared without a trace. After that, his scientific team, with the most advanced technology, could not find any traces of his death. This was unexplainable. Otherwise, even if he turned into ashes, the corresponding DNA should be able to be extracted, but there was no such evidence. Therefore, at that time, his team members and countless admirers of Li Yuan all over the world firmly believed that the mad scientist Li Yuan's experiment did not fail. There might be another reason for his disappearance. They also believed that Li Yuan would return one day. Unfortunately, as time passed, people had to accept the fact that Li Yuan might never return. Today, Li Yuan had become a legend, the greatest scientist and martial artist in human history. Only one person always believed that Li Yuan would return. Wang Zhong, Li Yuan's supervisor in Jingdu of Wuxia. Before Li Yuan began to explore and pursue immortality, he made a will and designated a successor. After the experiment accident, Wang Zhong took over Li Yuan's scientific team and terrifying assets. He continued Li Yuan's research. With the help of his team's research results, he, who was still young at that time, lived to this day more than 800 years later, and became one of the oldest people in the world. He also became the most influential person in the world. Unlike Li Yuan, Wang Zhong was slick and slick. He did his best to manage Li Yuan's team. What he pursued was not only science and immortality, but also an empire that was stronger than any other country for his master, because he always believed that his master Li Yuan would return. This was the belief that he lived on. Such an old man who was feared by the whole world. The most important job every day was to personally clean the roof of the Fengyun building. That was for his master, the mad scientist Li Yuan. This was something that everyone in the world knew. Otherwise, who would dare to call himself Wang Zhong's master? Who would have the qualifications? Turn off the surveillance. No one is allowed to leave. No one is allowed to disclose any information about tonight. And no one is allowed to follow me. Wang Zhong, who was so excited that tears streamed down his old face, immediately issued the order. Leaning on his cane, his hunched back suddenly looked like he was countless years younger. His old face glowed with a rosy glow, and his steps were much lighter as he quickly entered the private elevator. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, looking at each other in dismay. Do you think that it could be the Godfather? Godfather, this was the honorific title given to the mad scientist by later generations. Not the Godfather of science, but just the word Godfather. This was because Li Yuan was qualified to be a godfather in many fields. In addition, the rankings in any field could not express Li Yuan's achievements. That's impossible. Godfather doesn't look like that. I grew up looking at his statue every day. But Elder Wang seems to think that he is the Godfather. Is there anyone else who knows the Godfather better than Elder Wang? Think about it, is there such a possibility? Recently, there have been some superpowered people all over the world. Their powerful abilities have already attracted Elder Wang's attention. It's said that many departments have started to investigate, but they've been hindered. And these two people came out of nowhere. Could they be that kind of people? If that's the case, I'm afraid that it'll be detrimental to Elder Wang. Will Elder Wang be in any danger? Absolutely not. No one would dare to touch Elder Wang here. He can't move, even without our protection. That's true. Wang Zhong was equipped with the most advanced technology. Once he encountered any life-threatening situation, it would automatically activate. Even if a nuclear bomb exploded in front of him, he would be able to escape unscathed. Who could do anything to him? What if it's really the Godfather? If that's really the case? Everyone trembled with excitement just thinking about it. The Godfather. The person who truly influenced the world, dominated the world, and was revered by people all over the world. He was the pride of Wuxia, a godlike figure. If the Godfather were to return, what would it mean? Master, it's you, it must be you. You're finally back. I can finally see you again while I'm still alive. I can die without regrets. I can die without regrets. Master, I've tried my best, but I still can't surpass your research level. It's not that I and the top geniuses in the world can't do it. It's just that you're unprecedented. No one can surpass you. Master has already reached the realm of immortality. Wang Zhong's emotions were surging. He was about to see his master. He was already more than 800 years old, almost 900 years old, but he was still uneasy and trembling with fear. Finally, he came to the door of the entrance to the top floor. He stretched out his trembling hand that was as old as a dead tree. Creak. The door opened. Plop. Wang Zhong directly knelt on the ground and shouted with a choked voice, "Master, sob sob." He wanted to say something, but at this moment, even though he was already an old man, he actually began to sob like a child. Tears streamed down his face, and he couldn't say a word. He had completely lost control of his emotions. When he saw the holographic surveillance screen, he only guessed that it was his master. But at this moment, when he saw his master for the first time, he was completely sure that it was his master, because when he pushed the door open and entered, Chen Hao was slightly surprised when he saw him. Wang. You're Wang Zhong? Chen Hao stopped turning the chair, and woke up from the state of talking to himself. He looked at the old man in front of him, or to be exact, the old man who was already unbelievably old. The wrinkled face was covered with the traces of time. The only thing that Chen Hao could recognize was the eye-catching circular scar on Wang Zhong's cheek. That was the result of taking a bullet for Li Yuan. It was also when Li Yuan was still young but still had a sharp edge. Wang Zhong, who was only 15 years old, saved his life. At that time, Wang Zhong was a scientific prodigy, and Li Yuan was his idol. It was an accident and also a coincidence that saved Li Yuan's life. That bullet should have taken Wang Zhong's life, but Li Yuan, the scientific madman, took Wang Zhong back from the hands of the king of hell. From then on, Wang Zhong became Li Yuan's man. This was also the reason why Li Yuan trusted Wang Zhong. In fact, it wasn't trust, it was more like compensation. Woo. Master. It's me. Woo-woo. Wang Zhong cried emotionally. Get up. You're already so old, but you're still like a child. How did you know it was me? Chen Hao's mouth twitched, and he pretended to be calm. But the way he looked at Wang Zhong became much gentler. It was like an elder looking at a junior. Chapter 15:18. Master, it's the movement of your fingers and this young lady's appearance. Wang Zhong didn't get up but answered hurriedly with excitement. In his memory, the relationship between any woman and his master was just an exchange of interests. From the beginning to the end, no one could enter his master's heart. Women were just a normal physiological need for his master to vent. They were never a burden to him. But now, looking at his master who seemed to have been reborn, who was as young as a young man, who was much more handsome and imposing than before, and this stunning woman who looked exactly like the 10,000-year-old ancient corpse, Wang Zhong couldn't be sure. His current master, after being away for more than 800 years, must have undergone an astonishing change, perhaps including his personality. This was because his previous master's eyes were cold and arrogant, keeping others at arm's length. Even if he was the closest person to his master, there was not a single moment where he could open his heart to his master. But now, although his master's eyes, which were as sharp as swords, made him feel like he was seen through, they were no longer as cold as before. On the contrary, they made him feel warm. The movement of my fingers? Chen Hao was slightly taken aback, then smiled and said, Many people would do this habitual movement when sitting in this chair, right? Chen Hao could understand why Wang Zhong was talking about Yi Xian. When they first discovered the 10,000-year-old female corpse, Chen Hao had shown Wang Zhong the corpse's appearance. It wasn't strange that Wang Zhong remembered Yi Xian's appearance. Back then, the whole world knew that he had discovered the 10,000-year-old female corpse, but he was the only one who had seen the full appearance of the 10,000-year-old female corpse. There were only a few people who had seen the corpse's face, and Wang Zhong was one of them. And now, more than 800 years later, Wang Zhong was probably the only one who could still recognize Yi Xian's appearance. No, master, no one can imitate the rhythm of your fingers. Every time you play, I just have to look at your fingers and I feel relaxed and happy. This is a habitual movement of others. It's impossible to imitate, Wang Zhong said. Oh, that's amazing. I haven't seen you in so many years, but your flattery skills have improved. Chen Hao looked at his fingers that were still gently flicking and smiled. He didn't think that there was any rhythm to this habitual flicking of his fingers, and he really couldn't see any rhythm. But right at this moment, Yi Xian was the first to speak. That's not flattery. The armrest of your chair might have some other secret. Perhaps you don't feel it, but in my opinion, every single movement of yours is like the pulse of the heavens and the earth, and it points directly at his heart. So, he also feels that relaxed and happy feeling. There's such a thing? Chen Hao was surprised. He could take Wang Zhong's words as flattery, but he had no choice but to believe Yi Xian's words. Come and try. Let me see. Sure. Yi Xian smiled sweetly and replaced Chen Hao on the top-grade yellow rosewood throne that only Chen Hao had sat on before. Her slender fingers gently placed on the spot where Chen Hao had let go, and she imitated Chen Hao's movements and flicked lightly. Chen Hao and Wang Zhong watched curiously, but after Yi Xian flicked a few times, Wang Zhong shook his head slightly and looked at Chen Hao. Different? Chen Hao asked Wang Zhong. Master, this lady. You can call me Mistress Yi. Thank you. Yi Xian smiled. Sitting on the chair, she gently raised her chin. She had the delicate beauty of a young girl, which made Chen Hao a little dazed. It also completely subverted the image of Yi Xian in his mind. For a long time, Yi Xian, who was known as the #1 genius girl in the vast universe galaxy, in Chen Hao's imagination, should be a proud peacock, noble, and elegant goddess who regarded all men in the world as dung. Even if it wasn't that exaggerated, the arrogance of a genius girl was inevitable. After all, she wasn't an ordinary genius. She was someone who was more talented than Yi Lan. And Yi Lan was once more a genius than the Star River King. How talented was Yi Xian to not be arrogant? But now, the living Yi Xian that Chen Hao saw was completely different. Yi. Mistress Yi. Good. Mistress Yi, this is completely different from Master's rhythm and feeling. Completely different? Yi Xian was surprised. She didn't need to ask Chen Hao. Just by looking at his expression, the result was no different from Wang Zhong's. Try again. Yi Xian said to Chen Hao. Such a strange thing made her even more curious. Chen Hao did the same. He sat down on the chair again and gently, still casually, flicked his fingers. Wang Zhong quickly nodded repeatedly and revealed an intoxicated expression. Yi Xian's eyes, however, stared unblinkingly at Chen Hao's fingers. Very quickly, she seemed to have sunk into a deep state of comprehension. Occasionally, her brows would furrow slightly, and occasionally, she would reveal a smile. Chen Hao quietly looked at Yi Xian and did not stop his actions. He knew that Yi Xian had already sunk into a state of comprehension. It was just a top-grade yellow rosewood chair. What kind of magic could it have? As Chen Hao moved, he also began to focus all his attention on the armrest that he flicked, carefully sensing it. As time passed, the space between his eyebrows began to twitch slightly. At this moment, his energy, magical power, and perception were almost completely suppressed by the heavenly Tao. But Chen Hao's powerful soul force gradually began to condense as his mind became more and more focused and calm. Forcibly condensing. This was undoubtedly going against the heavenly Tao, but Chen Hao didn't care at all. It was just going against the heavenly Tao. Hadn't he done enough? Moreover, this was the only way to break through the heavenly Tao's suppression in the shortest time possible. To comprehend and break through the heavenly Tao's suppression on Earth, one needed time. Secondly, just like in the Imperial Star Secret Realm, comprehending and breaking through was also the beginning of restricting one's own Tao. Therefore, Chen Hao didn't want to and didn't have the time to comprehend and break through the heavenly Tao. Although the heavenly Tao on Earth was unbelievably powerful, and any cultivator might choose to break through at the first moment instead of forcibly breaking through, Chen Hao didn't hesitate at all. This was because when he was being suppressed, he faintly felt that this was a Tao that was completely unacceptable to him. He couldn't explain the specific situation for the time being, but the feeling was very clear. Bang, 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 bang. As time passed, the area between Chen Hao's eyebrows twitched more and more intensely. His extraordinarily handsome face was also covered in sweat, and his clothes had long since been drenched. Clearly, the current him had exhausted an enormous amount of his mind, and it was exceptionally strenuous for him. However, Wang Zhong was completely immersed in the movement of Chen Hao's fingers. He stood there in a daze, just like how he used to be. If Chen Hao and Yi Xian were still paying attention to him at this moment, they would discover that Wang Zhong, who was originally on the verge of death from old age, was magically producing a new vitality, a vitality that was full of vitality. At the same time, the entire wind and cloud building, which was made of special materials and could withstand the bombardment of nuclear bombs, also had subtle changes. The traces left behind by more than 800 years of time seemed to be disappearing. Unfortunately, Chen Hao and Yi Xian were both immersed in comprehending and didn't notice. Chapter 1519. Buzz. This strange situation continued for a full hour before Chen Hao's forehead suddenly shook, and a faint golden light gushed out in an instant. World within a world? In just an instant, Chen Hao, who had finally activated his fiery eyes of truth ability, cried out in surprise. No matter what, he would never have thought that the armrest of this supreme-grade Wangwali chair, where his finger flicked, would actually contain the aura of a world within a world. I understand. It was also at this time that Yi Xian came to her senses. It's your aura that caused the heaven and earth to shake. This weak aura seems to be completely compatible with your aura, and I can't activate it. It must be because of your aura. This means that the condition for activating it is you, just like a magic treasure recognizing its master. Ah. Yi Xian, who was still immersed in her own thoughts and quickly spoke of her judgment and understanding, suddenly saw the fiery eyes of truth between Chen Hao's brows. She suddenly couldn't continue speaking, and her charming face, which was full of confidence, suddenly turned red with a whoosh. Others didn't know the function of Chen Hao's fiery eyes of truth, but how could she not know? So in almost an instant, Yi Xian closed her legs, one hand covering her full and round twin peaks, and the other covering the private area between her legs. Such an exaggerated performance made Chen Hao not know whether to laugh or cry. He, who didn't have any thoughts at first, couldn't help but stare at Yi Xian a few times mischievously. He had to say, it was very good. He had to give it 10,000 likes. Compared to the motionless female corpse, who knew how many times more tempting. So fresh, so outstanding. Cough cough. But soon after, Chen Hao was frightened by his own evil and sinful thoughts. He couldn't help but repeatedly pray Ba in his heart. This was Yi Xian. To put it bluntly, he could totally call her mother. To put it nicely, it should be sister, right? Even if a cultivator's cells, genes, and even bloodline would constantly change as their cultivation increased, the origin wouldn't change. On this point, Chen Hao couldn't deceive himself. Although his current perception was completely unable to sense Yi Xian's bloodline origin aura, he believed that it should be connected to him. At this time, because Chen Hao had stopped moving, Wang Zhong also came to his senses. However, after seeing Chen Hao and Yi Xian's appearance, he, who was experienced and incomparably astute, directly bowed and took a few steps back. He turned his face to the side and waited for orders. You're right, this is the entrance to the world within a world. It's hidden here, and it has indeed recognized me as its master. I've become the key to this world within a world. Chen Hao hurriedly said in order to cover up his embarrassment. You can see it? There's nothing in the world that I can't see through. Tui, if you can look, then don't. At the very least, you should let them be mentally prepared, right? This is too sudden. As Yi Xian spoke, she became like a little girl in love. She was a little tempted, as if she was hugging a pipa to cover half of her face. She also had a direct and bold tone that said, You're here to poach me. Chen Hao's blood rushed to his head. Under the all-encompassing suppression of the heavenly Tao, it had to be said that for anyone, the most primitive desires would no longer be as easy to suppress as in a normal state. In fact, this was understandable. After all, after being suppressed, the difference between one and a normal person would be reduced. The strong sense of power, the law of the heavenly Tao, and so on would be weakened, but the sense of desire would not be weakened. Under this situation, the effect would naturally be greater. But fortunately, Chen Hao's willpower was strong, and there was a deep-rooted and insurmountable knot in his heart towards Yi Xian. Alright, I'm just emphasizing that to me, seeing this is just a piece of cake. Yi Xian, we should have a good talk. At the very least, we need to clearly define our relationship. Chen Hao said seriously. In fact, Chen Hao had many doubts and puzzles in his heart, but there wasn't enough time, so he temporarily suppressed them and didn't ask Yi Xian. Our relationship still needs to be defined. Yi Xian asked in return. Little Wang, you can leave first. Yes, master. Wang Zhong tactfully said and quickly left. No matter what happened between the two, his mood and spirit were infinitely good at this moment. He felt as if he had suddenly become 100 years younger. Even his walking speed was several times faster, and he felt that his energy was much, much more abundant. People are in high spirits because of happy events. This was what he thought. He didn't know that just by being immersed in Chen Hao's rhythm, his life had been baptized and he had gained a new lease of life. In fact, this was one of the main reasons why he was able to live until now. If he only relied on technology to extend his life, it would definitely be impossible to achieve this. Seeing Wang Zhong leave, Yi Xian directly went to Chen Hao's side again. What was even more exaggerated was that she actually boldly took the initiative to sit on Chen Hao's lap. Yi Xian, all these years you've always been in my mind, right? Yes, I've watched you grow up, I know everything you've done. I know everything you've thought, everything. Then you also know what kind of price Senior Yi Lan and King Ying paid to find you. And you also know that they've always been looking forward to seeing you, but you? I know, but do you think I can come out just because I want to? If you hadn't ascended to the Supreme of Hongmeng, I would still be an invisible person, and could only silently experience your experiences in your mind. However, when I could come out, it, which is the artifact that old God protected and recognized me as its master, brought you and me to earth. These are all things I can't control and can't change. Yi Xian's face was like the ever-changing weather, changing at will. In the time it took to say one sentence, Her eyes were hazy with tears, and she looked so pitiful. Your state of mind and emotions are very strong, Chen Hao said. He could be considered to have discovered that Yi Xian was the first, and also the only, person who could change his mood in an instant. Of course, Chen Hao knew that Yang Luyan could do it too, but Yang Luyan controlled it to the smallest detail, and had no intention of affecting him. What you said is the truth, but I'm revealing my true emotions. Everything about me to you is real. Don't be like this. You're doing this because of your birth? Yi Xian hit the nail on the head. Yes. And I don't think that between us. You don't have to say it, I know what you want to say. But what you want to say and what you're thinking is not a problem at all. First, you and I have nothing to do with our birth, bloodline, and origin. If you want to say something, it's just that I witnessed your birth. The so-called genes you extracted are not mine at all. Think about it, with your original technology, can you really extract the highest level of my immortal golden body, the Hongmeng immortal body cells? Chapter 1520. Hongmeng Indestructible Body? Chen Hao was slightly shocked. The Hongmeng Indestructible Body was the strongest physique in Jiutian City. It was much stronger than Hu Meinyang's innate Taoist embryo. Moreover, this was not a realm that could be reached simply by cultivating the immortal bloodline. It required one to have the innate Hongmeng physique. Those who possessed this physique, even if their comprehension was not good, could reach an extremely high realm simply by relying on their physical talent. No wonder I couldn't damage your body in the slightest even after using all the methods I could. Even after so many years, I still couldn't succeed. In the end, I was able to extract your genes. So they weren't yours? Of course not. The Hongmeng Indestructible Body is not that easy to extract unless you had the strength you have now, but that's impossible. Then whose genes did I extract? Him. Other than him, who else could it be? Yi Xian pointed at her head and said, At that time, I was indeed like what old God told you. He wanted to return to Earth and choose a new master. I also thought that I was doomed because no energy would awaken. As long as he found a new master, I would no longer exist, along with my physical body. However, perhaps my life was not meant to end. My immortal bloodline actually awakened the latent Hongmeng Taoist physique once again, turning me into the Hongmeng Indestructible Body. Therefore, he couldn't bear to part with me, and then he met you. And you became the carrier for my awakening. However, only when you advanced to the Grand Mist Supremacy realm could I truly absorb enough Hongmeng Qi from your mind to awaken. I see. Then what about the absolute art inheritance I awakened back then? I don't have that feeling now. It's just that the awakening is still there. It's also helping you. It doesn't want you to die. If you die, I'm finished. It can't bear to part with me, and it can't get rid of me. The Hongmeng Indestructible Body is already bound to it, so when facing many powerful spirits of all things, it deliberately linked up with you. Otherwise, how could you only awaken the absolute art and not your memories? However, the most important thing is that you can use and comprehend it. It's actually just a platform for you. Whether you can comprehend and use it is mainly up to you. Yet you've done it. You're very formidable. Truthfully speaking, you're much more formidable than others. Yi Xian stared at Chen Hao. She originally spoke with a serious expression. Yet towards the end, she suddenly shot him a flirtatious glance and teased him playfully and seductively. It caused others to be truly unable to measure her thoughts and character. Coupled with the formidable aura brought about by her formidable mental state, and the strength of her emotions, there was no doubt that her lethality was extremely great. Demoness. This is a true demoness. Chen Hao thought in his heart, yet his expression remained tranquil, as if he wasn't affected in the slightest. He said, Exactly what sort of existence is it? You still can't control over it? In name, I'm its master, but in reality, I'm just a puppet controlled by it. Sigh. I know that my father is by my side, and my mother can only be seen after a trip to the Milky Way, but I can't do anything. I was brought to this mysterious earth again. On the moon, it helped me resist the suppression of the heavenly Tao, but here, it went on strike again. Tell me, am I the master, or is it the master? Sometimes when I think about it, I really regret getting it. How can you understand how I feel? Chen Hao was speechless. He realized that there was no need for him to ask. Yi Xian had said everything that needed to be said. With just a few words, he had nothing else to ask. Can we talk properly? Okay, now let's talk about our relationship. I've already said it so clearly. What's there to talk about? You're my Taoist companion, and I'm your Taoist companion. Are you not willing and want to be irresponsible? Responsible? What responsibility do I have to you? I left Earth and stepped into another world. I cultivated hard and worked hard to improve. All the efforts I've done seem to be for you, right? If there's anyone responsible, it should be you who's responsible for me, okay? Well, according to what you said, it does make sense. Don't worry, I'll definitely be responsible for you. However, from my point of view, especially from the point of view of a weak woman like me, you really should be responsible for me. You have to know that in these tens of thousands of years, my heart has always revolved around you. Everything you've done, especially everything you've done with Chen Shui and the other girls, even your thoughts, have always shone brightly on my pure and flawless heart. Although you don't know of my existence, the fact is that you've already tarnished my heart. Oh, or rather, possessed it. Tell me, can you not be responsible? Moreover, haven't you realized that the two of us have already reached a point where our hearts are linked? You don't have to deliberately numb your intuition. The eyes are the windows to the soul. When you avoid looking at me, you've already betrayed yourself. Fuck. Faced with a mouth that was as fast as a machine gun, and it was reasonable and every word was a gem, Chen Hao couldn't refute at all. He could only curse in his heart. I don't like you and I don't like women. I know that you don't like women who are too strong or too smart. Please don't worry, I'm really not a strong woman. At most, I'm a little smart, but I'll be muddle-headed in the future. Right now, I can't help it. After all, you don't accept me. You think that I'm too proactive, too passionate, too hot-headed, and don't have the restraint of a woman, etc. However, if you put yourself in my shoes and think about it, for tens of thousands of years, I didn't even have the opportunity to communicate with others. I could only watch you and experience everything you've experienced. Are you done? No. Well, continue. Chen Hao was speechless as he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. However, Yi Xian continued to speak like a machine gun. Only when the light snoring sound of Chen Hao's deep sleep came from his mouth did she stop reluctantly. The corners of her mouth hooked up in a proud arc, and she waved her fist at Chen Hao. That appearance! In what way did she look like a woman who had lived for countless years? No, it should be said that she had been forced to sleep for countless years, and had just awakened? Phew. So comfortable. So tired. Yi Xian let out a long sigh of relief. She, who had been shamelessly sitting on Chen Hao's lap, naturally and gently leaned on Chen Hao's firm chest at this moment. With a sweet and happy smile, she closed her eyes. Very quickly, her breathing became deep and regular, and she entered a state of deep sleep. Tired. Regardless of whether it was Chen Hao or her, they were both tired. The experiences and transformations he had gone through during this period of time, especially for Chen Hao, required him to be tenacious. Even though there were no major ups and downs, the changes were so unpredictable that it was completely beyond his imagination. Most importantly, they were currently being suppressed by the terrifying heavenly Tao laws on Earth. It was difficult for anyone to adapt to suddenly losing power from a powerful cultivator. Their bodies and minds were unable to adapt. Chen Hao and Yi Xian seemed to be indifferent, as if it didn't cause any discomfort at all. However, their bodies still felt tired in the end. Chapter 1522. While Chen Hao and Yi Xian were immersed in mortal sleep, in the wind and cloud building, Wang Zhong, who was more than 800 years old, was issuing orders in high spirits. At this moment, the top scientists in various fields on Earth, the leaders of various major forces, the top beauties, stars, and top chefs from all over the world boarded a private plane at the first moment and rushed to the wind and cloud building in Wuxia's capital at the fastest speed. And these were only the people on the surface. The number one people of various major countries were also rushing over at the fastest speed. No one knew what was going on, but everyone was sure that a major event that shook the entire world had happened. Otherwise, Elder Wang, who had almost retreated behind the scenes and no longer received guests, would not personally invite them in his name. Moreover, they had a time limit of 15 minutes to arrive. Otherwise, they would be disqualified. 15 minutes. Even though Earth's technology had developed to a very terrifying extent and ordinary civil aviation could travel around the world in an hour, half an hour was still very tight. After all, even if it was a private plane, the participants still needed to prepare. To put it bluntly, if they encountered a secret person going to the toilet, it would be too late. However, all the people who were invited were flattered. Without any hesitation, under the tight time limit, they directly registered without washing their faces or changing their clothes. Therefore, half an hour later, the guests who came to the private airport in front of the wind and cloud building at the fastest speed had to hold back their laughter when they saw other people. Some people were wearing pajamas, some were barefoot, some were only wearing a pair of underwear, and some were even wearing sexy underwear. Ha ha ha, old Tom, I didn't expect you to have such a hobby. It's really surprising. Jack, I don't mean to despise homosexuality, but I despise people like you who are clearly gay but don't dare to admit it. You have no right to laugh at my hobby. I just like to wear this kind of clothes because they make my body and mind happy. It's so beautiful, Mr. Tom. May I ask which master made this? Oh, Mr. Lying, I'm very happy to see you. I wish your new movie a hit. If you wear this style, it will definitely be more moving. This was personally made by the top underwear designer, Marcus Jones. Hey, isn't that the current god of cooking in Wuxia? What beautiful muscles. Oh my god, that figure seems to be Huaxia's N01 and his wife. Ah, that's country M, that's country Y. Ha 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 ha, they're both wearing underwear. What a beautiful woman. I seem to have thought of a possibility. What? Haven't you heard that Elder Wang searches for beautiful women from all over the world through tremendous manpower, resources, and wealth every year? As long as they had a good figure, beauty, and health, they could agree to one condition. The contract would only last for a year, and once the year was up, even if they didn't do anything, they would still be able to receive a generous reward. If there was no prettier replacement in the new year, they could still renew the contract. It was said that when Elder Wang first started this, everyone thought that Elder Wang liked this type of thing, and many top beauties chose to reject it. However, after a few decades, news spread that Elder Wang had prepared this contract in preparation for his godfather's return. Since then, countless beauties took the initiative to sign up. Godfather didn't have a woman in his life, but the number of beauties who had intimate relations with him was not small. It was said that it was an exchange of benefits. And today's battle formation. Oh my god, you mean Godfather might have returned? Some internationally renowned figures were now gathered in the reception hall of the Wind and Cloud building without caring about their image and wearing revealing clothes, discussing in shock. Godfather? That's the so-called advanced technology. In the crowd, beside an old man who was as calm as a mountain, there was a slender, handsome, and extraordinary young man. When he heard the discussion of the crowd, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a trace of disdain. Although he was standing beside the old man and taking a step back, his appearance attracted the attention of countless people present. Everyone's eyes flashed with surprise. A young man with such a temperament was simply too dazzling. He was like a natural-born king. No matter where he went, he would become the focus of everyone's attention. Many beauties and celebrities were attracted to this young man. Zhenyang, it's best to put away your pride here. No matter how strong you are, the Wind and Cloud building, Godfather, and Elder Wang are not to be blasphemed. Do you know that our Fujita family can't compare to them? Father, I've said that my appearance is the beginning of the rise of our Fujita family. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I just want to see the legendary unbreakable Wind and Cloud building, as well as Elder Wang, who has lived for more than 800 years, to see if he's a person like me. Of course, if the so-called Godfather returns, I can meet him and learn from him. That would be perfect. Is this the Wind and Cloud building? It's so easy to come in. It saves me the trouble of making a special trip here. Keep a low profile. Don't worry, nothing will happen. The so-called Godfather's era has passed. It's just an era of fools who are slightly enlightened. In my eyes, it's nothing. Only the so-called technological weapons are a little interesting. Since the wind and cloud building dared to investigate me, they should be prepared to be destroyed by me. You. Father begs you, don't act recklessly. I know. Let's see the 800 years old Wang Zhong first. Hee, the legendary wind and cloud building, I'm coming. The legendary Elder Wang. I should be able to see him, right? You should be able to. However, Gaia, you can't act rashly. Wind and cloud building. You can't offend it if you don't have absolute confidence. Otherwise, our blood clan will face destruction and no one can save us. The arrival of an era inevitably means the end of an era. We're already here. How can the Godfather's era not end? Patriarch, you're old. The patriarch of the Fujita family, Fujita Steel. Isn't that his second son, Fujita Managa? No wonder he became the #1 expert in bird country at such a young age. Such an aura is indeed terrifying. The patriarch of Wuxia's Mu family must be the strongest in the younger generation of Wuxia, Mu Qianshan. Mu Qianshan? He's Mu Qianshan? His aura is really strong. It doesn't seem to be any worse than Fujita Managa from bird country. The patriarch of the blood clan also brought people here. That should be Gaia, who rose to 4th place in the mercenary world within a year. Chapter 1523. The crowd's attention was attracted by the people who came in at this moment. These were the most powerful martial arts families in the world, and also the most eye-catching and worshipped existence in the world today. Because of the writings of Godfather Li Yuan, the human body's potential fever had appeared on Earth, and there was no doubt that ancient martial arts families were the most outstanding existence in this area. Among the people who came, Fujita Shinaga, Mu Qianshan, Gaia, and other young masters had risen to fame in just a few years. If Chen Hao and Yi Xian were present at this moment, they would discover the true identity of these young masters. The spirits of all creation. The spirits of all creation reincarnated directly on Earth on the Star of Origin. Such spirits of all creation were undoubtedly not simple existences. This was indeed the case. Reincarnated on Earth, which could be said to be a space of nirvana, they would be suppressed by Earth's powerful heavenly axiom from the womb. Under such circumstances, it would be thousands of times more difficult to awaken memories and inheritance, and it would only be possible with extremely strong comprehension and soul power. Because of this, basically, those who awakened their memories were from these martial arts families. If it were in the homes of ordinary people, perhaps there would be no primer for awakening at all. So what if one's comprehension and soul power were strong? Phew! Chen Hao breathed a long sigh of relief and slowly woke up. The night had quietly passed, and dawn had arrived. A slowly rising red sun had already peeked out half of its head. He turned his head slightly to look at Yi Xian, who was still sleeping soundly on his chest. At this moment, there was still a sweet smile on her lips, but she had lost her charm, playfulness, and seductiveness when she was awake. She had a tranquil elegance, and under the warm sunlight of the rising sun, her rosy cheeks looked even more attractive. Slap. Suddenly, Chen Hao's slap was not heavy, but it was not light either. It was a slap on Yi Xian's perky, round and bouncy buttocks. At the same time he said, "Stop pretending, it's time to go." "Ah, you're so annoying. How can you bear to break such a beautiful scene so easily? How does it feel?" Cough. Chen Hao could not keep up with this girl's rhythm. He directly got up and pushed her away. He suddenly opened his palm and slashed at the armrest of the Wangwali chair. In the next moment, the armrest broke. The cut was smooth as if it had been cut by a divine weapon. Amazing! You're still able to unleash such a powerful physical strength despite being completely suppressed? Yi Xian was slightly surprised. However, can you ask your wife first? Just because you can't open the mind space doesn't mean that your wife can't. Such a good chair was destroyed by you. My dear wife. Chen Hao glared at Yi Xian for a few seconds before saying, "Can you?" No matter what, he has been on Earth for many years. Although he is in a weak state of confinement, he can still barely comprehend the suppression of the heavenly axiom. He has more or less broken through a little. How can there be a problem with opening the mind space? As she spoke, Yi Xian waved her hand and sent the Wang Wali chair and the armrest in Chen Hao's hands into her mind space. Opening the mind space was not a difficult task for any cultivator. In fact, as long as one could break through the suppression of the first heavenly Tao, one could do it. However, Chen Hao wasn't trying to break through. He was trying to break through. Forcefully opening the sky eye with his pure will was already his limit. Using soul power and energy to open the mental world wasn't something he could do at the moment. This required a certain amount of time. Do you need me to tell you what I've learned? No need. The heavenly Tao here is incompatible with my Tao. Let's go. Let's go down and take a look before leaving this place. The secular world is not suitable for us to break through the suppression of the heavenly Tao. Moreover, you have to step into the Hongming domain. In the immortal world, as well as from the two elders who sent them here, they already knew that the suppression of earth existed. Whether it was in the secular world on the surface of earth, which was the mortal world, or in the cultivation world on earth, the suppression existed. However, the cultivation world had the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, as well as the clear aura of the heavenly Tao. It was undoubtedly much better to enter there to comprehend and break through. Oh, okay. Yi Xian smiled slightly, secretly delighted. Chen Hao had obviously accepted her, but he didn't directly express it. Master. Chen Hao and Yi Xian had just pushed open the door leading into the building when they saw Wang Zhong standing at the door. Obviously, Wang Zhong had been waiting there quietly for a long time. Master, breakfast is ready. Master and Matriarchy, please enjoy. Breakfast? That's good too. It's been a long time. Little Wang, are those flying devices from our Fengyan Corporation? Master, almost all of them are manufactured by our Fengyan Corporation, but we sell them to them. Some of them are our current higher-ups. Wang Zhong said respectfully. Master has returned. Little Wang acted on my own initiative and informed the higher-ups of the various fields of the Fengyan Corporation, as well as the leaders of the various martial Tao forces that Master likes, and some ladies of etiquette, to welcome Master. Chen Hao frowned slightly. Wang Zhong's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly said, if Master doesn't like it, I'll dismiss them now. However, to Wang Zhong's surprise, Chen Hao waved his hand and said, no need. Since they're all here, let's meet. Martial Tao forces. How are the martial Tao forces now? Are there any new rising young experts? Master, the progress of the martial Tao forces today is astonishing, especially the young experts who have risen in recent years. According to the information that our Fengyan Corporation has, we've discovered people who can fly in the void like birds with their own strength. However, their speed is only at the speed of birds. Their strength is also not much stronger than our genetic humans. However, their growth is very fast, and now they're threatening our Fengyan Corporation's position. Therefore, we've started investigating and contacting them in the past few years. Unfortunately, until now, no one has agreed to research for our corporation. I know that Master will like this, so we're planning to take further action. It seems that they've already seen through some things, probably more than me. Yi Xian frowned slightly and looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao nodded slightly, then looked at the old man Wang Zhong and said, Little Wang, stop the investigation immediately and cancel any further actions. This isn't a field that Fengyan Corporation can research. Yes, Master. Although Wang Zhong didn't know what was going on, he, who was experienced in the ways of the world, could hear the meaning behind Yi Xian's words. Chapter 1524. It seemed that Chen Hao and Yi Xian were also that kind of people. This surprised Wang Zhong. In his mind, his master was a god. As long as his master stepped into a certain field, he would definitely reach the peak of that field. Although Yi Xian's words implied that they were inferior to those people for the time being, Chen Hao and Yi Xian's calm expressions made Wang Zhong understand that there was no need for him to worry. More importantly, he knew that with his master's return, the power that the Fengyan group could gather was definitely not something he could compare to. Even he could control the situation in the current situation, let alone his master. The martial arts factions you invited this time include such people, right? Chen Hao asked. Yes, and there are quite a few of them. At least 10 of them can be confirmed to have the ability to fly. There are also some signs that they are this kind of people. Oh, what signs are you sure of? They don't age. Master, this kind of people started appearing 100 years ago. After they came of age, their appearance has never changed. They always look like people in their 20s. This is something that even our Fengyan group can't do. It's also not something that any genetic medicine can do. Moreover, these people, even if they don't show their strength, are usually mysterious and unfathomable. Whatever they want to do, there's almost nothing they can't do. Moreover, they are full of mysteries. I see. When will the banquet begin? All the invited people have already arrived. It's up to you, Master. Then let's begin after breakfast. After saying that, Chen Hao walked away. The familiar staircase, the familiar room, the familiar dining table, the familiar sumptuous breakfast, the familiar… Chen Hao thought of everything, but he didn't expect Wang Zhong to arrange for so many beautiful, enchanting, and sexy women to serve him in such a short time. Good morning, Master. They stood neatly in a row at the end of the long and narrow dining table. Their expressions were filled with excitement as they bowed. Their sexy and revealing clothes revealed their alluring, snow-white cleavage to Chen Hao and Yi Xian, giving them a panoramic view. Fortunately, these 20 women quickly raised their heads and looked at Chen Hao and Yi Xian, who came in. With just one look, all of their eyes widened. Their faces instantly flushed when they looked at Chen Hao. They were secretly delighted and shocked. They were delighted that their master was so young and handsome. How was he the old man in their imagination? Even if he was an old man, they would be willing to sacrifice themselves for the greatest godfather since ancient times, let alone this young man who was so handsome that even heaven and earth couldn't tolerate it. Because Li's exchange principle did not require virgins, it could be said that with just one look, many of the 20 women who saw Chen Hao had their hearts fluttering with just one look. However, when their eyes' gazes fell on Yi Xian's as they wanted to see what kind of woman was to be with their masters, of course, they were ashamed of their inferiority. This was the only feeling they had. Yi Xian didn't wear any makeup, but her skin was snow-white and tender. Her brows were picturesque and her lips were red. But these were not important. What really made them look up to her and feel ashamed of their inferiority was Yi Xian's temperament and aura. It was not something they could compare to. Such a scene made Wang Zhong, who was following behind, feel a little uneasy. He knew very well that this was his master's hobby in the past. But now, his master had Yi Xian by his side and called herself the mistress. His master didn't object, so their relationship was naturally not shallow. Before preparing, Wang Zhong also hesitated, but in the end he still insisted on his master's hobby. After all, his master could not use it, but he couldn't not prepare. He would rather offend Mistress Yi. This was his duty. On the other hand, Chen Hao was first stunned, and then he habitually swept his gaze over the 20 women one by one, and he quickly judged and rated them in his heart. But when he was pointing out who was who, he suddenly shook his head and smiled lightly, and said, "After losing my strength, the strength that I'm accustomed to has become extremely terrifying. Beauties, all of you can leave. Little Wang, consider them all as having accompanied me. Carry out the agreement." "Yes, Master," Wang Zhong said respectfully. "Master, Mistress Yi, please enjoy." Chen Hao nodded and actually took Yi Xian's hand. He didn't look at the women and said, "You haven't tried the delicacies of earth, right? You can actually resist it. It seems that my charm is not small. I haven't tried it before. Are you treating me?" Yi Xian smiled. In short, there were two aspects. Fortunately, she was smart and didn't dwell on the first aspect. Having grown up with Chen Hao, it could be said that she knew everything about Chen Hao's present and Li Yuan's past. Chen Hao's memory was like a book in front of her that she could read at any time, especially when Chen Hao was weak. In the past, when faced with such situations, Chen Hao would always leave one or two behind. Of course, the black lines on Chen Hao's face disappeared, and he eased up a little. "But as far as you know, and as far as I know, the best food isn't these so-called top chef's delicacies. After this, take me to the snack street, gourmet street, or some other place to treat me. Only then will you be sincere. You're quite demanding." However, in order to cultivate feelings, I promise you. Chen Hao said. Let's talk about it first. Let's eat. Yes, hubby. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Stand on ceremony. What? Fuck, can you slow down? Chen Hao originally thought that Yi Xian was just joking. Who knew that this girl would sweep away all the delicacies in front of her like a whirlwind? This image was really overturned. Chen Hao saw that there was still no effect after he finished speaking, so he immediately started to eat. It had to be said that under the suppression of the heavenly axiom, they didn't have the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to extract, but they still retained their abnormally strong physical bodies. Their bodies were undoubtedly extremely hungry, and they also needed to use mortal food to replenish the lowest level of energy to maintain the operation of their bodies. Therefore, when Wang Zhong returned after sending out the 20 beautiful women, and saw the way Chen Hao and Yi Xian ate, he was dumbfounded. All kinds of delicacies were just for the master to eat whatever he liked. The total amount was enough for the breakfast of 100 people, but the hundreds of exquisite snacks and delicacies that filled the long and narrow table were all swept clean. Little Wang, if there's anything else to eat, just bring it up. No need to be so fancy and exquisite, as long as it's delicious. Big fish and big meat, roasted whole lamb, roasted suckling pig, anything is fine. Plop. Wang Zhong staggered and almost fell. He hurriedly replied, Okay, master, please wait a moment. Desserts, bring more. Pure sugar, honey, anything is fine. A few big basins should be enough. Cough, cough. Okay, mistress Yi. Chapter 1525. Subsequently, numerous beautiful attendants entered in a single file, either carrying food. All of them were dumbstruck when they saw Chen Hao and Yi Xian's table manners. If it wasn't for Wang Zhong winking at them, they would have been stunned. Half an hour later, the two rubbed their stomachs as if they hadn't had enough. They looked at each other and laughed out loud. If this goes on, no matter how much food we have, we'll starve to death. Don't tell me you don't have anything to eat. Chen Hao stopped laughing and looked at Yi Xian. You've been my wet nurse for tens of thousands of years. Now, I can be your wet nurse. Yi Xian touched her mouth full of honey and smiled sweetly and proudly. Wet nurse? Chen Hao naturally understood what Yi Xian meant, but he purposely looked at Yi Xian's full breasts. His brows twitched slightly. Go away, hooligan. I mean to provide you with energy. If you dare to activate your heaven's eye, I'll cut off your milk. Come, look here. Look. What surprised Chen Hao was that Yi Xian was like a hag, arrogant and domineering. She even pointed at her chest with one hand on her waist, and the other on her chest, provoking him. Wang Zhong was so frightened by this that he shrank to the side and laughed secretly. Master, the once arrogant and insufferably arrogant master, when had there ever been a woman who could tame him? This mistress wasn't simple. What kind of existence was the female corpse of 10,000 women in the past? Wang Zhong had 10 million whys in his mind. Unfortunately, if his master didn't say, he didn't dare to ask. What he should know, his master would naturally tell him. At this moment, 1,000 curses flew through Chen Hao's mind. Damn, you're so arrogant, but for the sake of the milk, I can only endure it. Milk. Chen Hao held it in for a long time, then stretched out his hand and spat out a word. It must be hard for you to endure it, hubby. Fuck. Chen Hao cursed inwardly. She was really a seductress. He continued to endure. Milk. Wang. What caused Chen Hao to stare with wide eyes was that after the seemingly complacent and arrogant Yi Xian approached him in a provocative manner, she actually forcefully, ferociously, and directly kissed Chen Hao on the lips. This caused Chen Hao to stare with wide eyes, and his mind almost went blank. Motherfucker, since when did this move of mine subdue so many women? Who would have thought that the god of slaughter Chen Hao would be subdued by a woman today? Fortunately, the moment they kissed, abundant spiritual energy of heaven and earth flowed out from Yi Xian's clumsy tongue. Oh, Chen Hao was still glaring, but Yi Xian closed her eyes with a flushed face. She was the one who took the initiative, but at this moment, Chen Hao had the absolute upper hand. 10,000 whys flew through Yi Xuanyou's mind. She had learned from Chen Hao and the other girls how to kiss and mingle without revealing anything. Why was it that when she actually did it, it was harder to comprehend than the most profound secret art? It seemed that it was completely beyond the scope of her state of mind. Humph, little girl, how dare you be so arrogant in front of me without a real practice? Chen Hao was pleased with himself. He could clearly feel that Yi Xian was a little awesome at the beginning, but the moment they kissed, she was completely messed up. How could Chen Hao not know what was going on? In short, when it came to such matters, the older the wiser. Okay, let go of me. When Yi Xian was about to suffocate, she finally struggled to break free from Chen Hao's embrace. Chen Hao, on the other hand, sighed with a smile. The replenishment of spiritual energy of heaven and earth made him in high spirits. Although it was just a breath's effort, it was much more effective than the huge amount of delicacies he had previously swept up. Isn't this energy my energy? Chen Hao said. Of course it's yours. For tens of thousands of years, you've been supplying me. Of course, I'm completely compatible with your energy attribute. Yi Xian said. That's true. Let's go, it's time to see the spirits of all things awakened on earth. After saying that, Chen Hao took Yi Xian's hand and stepped out of the restaurant side by side. Wang Zhong immediately followed. Godfather has returned. I didn't expect it to be true. An hour ago, when Chen Hao agreed to hold the banquet, Wang Zhong announced the news of Godfather Li Yuan's return to the big shots who had been waiting in the living room for several hours. Today will definitely be the most sensational day in the world in hundreds of years. The greatest godfather of mankind, Li Yuan, has returned after disappearing for more than 800 years. And I will be one of the first to witness it with my own eyes. It's really the return of Godfather. It's worth it. The greatest man in the legends. Today, more than 800 years later, I wonder what the old man looks like. What exactly happened in the explosion back then, and where did he go? Godfather is back, our Wuxia. Haha. With Godfather back, no one can shake the already dominant Wuxia. Sigh. Our great America wants to return to the hegemonic era of the 21st century, but it has undoubtedly become more uncertain. Send the order back. The cooperation with Bird Country is temporarily terminated. Send the order back. Make the biggest concession in the business negotiations with Fengyun Group. There is no need to reach a cooperation agreement. Send the order back. When the Fengyun building was in chaos, orders that were enough to attract the attention of the whole world were issued by the big shots in the building. At this moment, the entire earth began to shake. Although they didn't know what had happened, they could tell that it was related to Fengyun Group. Very good, very good. I hope you won't disappoint me. Is it really the return of Godfather? Very good. He really came back in time. Could it be that he knew that we couldn't hold back anymore? An ancient martial arts expert, ha ha ha. He disappeared for more than 800 years. It's not easy for him to live until now. Isn't it good to never appear again? At least he can maintain this legend. Godfather, the Godfather of all realms. If he kneels in front of me and begs for mercy, and let the whole world witness it. This should feel good, right? This time, it's enough for me to step into the world of cultivation. Unlike most people who were in awe of Godfather Li Yuan, there was another group of people present, the spirits of all things, who were looking forward to Godfather Li Yuan's arrival. They weren't welcoming him respectfully, but challenging him. Those who were able to reincarnate on Earth were all big shots in the past, big shots in the world of cultivation. Even if some of them didn't reach the level of Heavenly Lord, their talent and comprehension were enough to reach the level of Heavenly Emperor. This was the truly terrifying existence. Under the suppression of Earth's supreme heavenly axiom, they realized that even if they knew the entrance to Earth's world of cultivation, if they wanted to enter, they had to gather enough luck to pass through the barrier and step into the world of cultivation. Perhaps this was the reason why some of the big shots in Earth's history were worshipped as gods after their deaths. For example, the great emperors of Wuxia's dynasties since ancient times were all people who gathered great luck. It wasn't impossible for them to become gods after their deaths and step into the world of cultivation. Perhaps this was the reason why Mount Tai became a pilgrimage ground. It was just that the world still didn't know the truth. After all, Chen Hao already knew from the immortal world that Mount Tai was one of the entrances to Earth's world of cultivation. Chapter 1526. Therefore, gathering providence became the key. The best way to gather providence was undoubtedly to become famous. And the fastest way to become famous was naturally to trample on the strong in the eyes of the world, or a powerful force. Without a doubt, the Fengyun group was the best target. And now that Godfather Li Yuan had returned, it was undoubtedly even better. Many spirits knew that if they could suppress Godfather Li Yuan, they would definitely become famous, and the providence they gathered in one go would definitely satisfy their needs to step into the world of cultivation. However, at this moment, just based on the aura in the hall, they knew that many of their kind had come this time. Godfather Li Yuan did not matter, and they did not take him seriously at all. However, the competition with the other spirits would definitely be fierce, and it was hard to say who would reap the most benefits in the end. The melodious and pleasant sound of a zither, like the sound of nature, suddenly drifted over. The noisy crowd suddenly quieted down. Pairs of eyes at this moment looked at the slowly rising and spreading stage at the innermost part of the reception hall. Under the bright lights, a figure that lit up everyone's eyes came into view. It was a woman in a white dress, dressed in an ancient costume, with an elegant temperament, and filled with classical beauty. In the real three-dimensional virtual scene, she sat leisurely and elegantly played the zither. Like a high mountain and flowing water, a gurgling spring, the beautiful sound of a beauty cleansed everyone's heart and eyes. The sound of nature. So beautiful. The moment she appeared, she attracted everyone's attention, and it was no exaggeration to say that she was breathtaking. The ancient zither, the elegant and classical beauty, even though they were in the real three-dimensional virtual scene, seemed to be in tune with the pulse of heaven and earth, and looked so beautiful and sounded so intoxicating. This was a song that could directly shake one's soul, and also a woman that could move people's hearts. At this moment, even the spirits present were intoxicated, and their gazes fell on the woman's face in a daze, unable to move away. Silence, only the sound of the zither could be heard. Not to mention that they did not dare to speak loudly for fear of alarming the people in the sky. They even held their breaths, afraid to affect the woman in the slightest. Beautiful. This scene should only be beautiful in the sky, and no one was willing to break it. This woman, even Chen Hao, who was behind the scenes, was looking at the woman on the stage with bright eyes. He was speechless. It had to be said that this was the most talented and perceptive woman he had ever seen. She had only casually played a song to set up an ambush and the front line for him, but she could actually play to such a soul-stirring level. Even Chen Hao himself did not think that he could achieve this. He needed to perform. This woman was none other than Yi Xian. Wang Zhong, the old guy, was supposed to be the first to appear on the stage with the sound of the zither and grandly introduce the returning master. However, at this moment, he was stupefied and stunned on the spot. His raised foot stopped in midair, and he carefully retracted it. Such beautiful music, such beautiful scenery, he did not dare, nor did he have the heart to destroy it. Chen Hao glanced at Wang Zhong and shook his head slightly. Of course, he knew the purpose of Wang Zhong's banquet. Fengyun group seemed to be glorious, but in the 800 years he had left, how could Wang Zhong's cohesion compare? Even if other forces were still unable to threaten Fengyun group's position, the internal strife and power struggle of Fengyun group had caused it to lose its former glory. Now it was just a starving camel that was still bigger than a horse. Wang Zhong was gradually aging and nearing his death, so naturally, the situation was getting more and more intense. There were many restless people, and these people were undoubtedly on the invitation list today. In Wang Zhong's opinion, as long as his master appeared, no one would dare to cause trouble. Although Fengyun group had lost its meaning to Chen Hao, and there was nothing worth remembering, it was still founded by him. This was one of the reasons he agreed to Wang Zhong's banquet. More importantly, Chen Hao wanted to see the spirits of all things born on earth. He needed to understand the basic situation through these spirits of all things. After all, although Chen Hao had some understanding of earth and its cultivation world in the immortal world, the immortal world was not suppressed by the heavenly axiom. Moreover, when he contacted Yang Luyan, she did not reveal much about Earth's current situation because she had no plans to return to Earth for the time being. When Chen Hao and Yi Xian came to Earth through the moon's entrance, they were treated as Yang Luoyan's friends, so they did not ask much. Therefore, the best way to understand the basic situation from these spirits of all things lingering in Earth's secular world was undoubtedly the best way. Otherwise, he and Yi Xian would not be able to understand everything in a day or two. Chen Hao did not have the time to waste. Previously, he had left Earth for tens of thousands of years. As for how long, Chen Hao could not be sure. After all, he had experienced 3 greater worlds. However, according to the space-time laws of the greater worlds in ancient chaos, it was still 30,000 years. On Earth it was only a little more than 800 years. This meant that 1 year on Earth was 300 or 400 years in ancient chaos. It was the same for the great world of Xiandi. How long could Chen Hao stay on Earth? Gently breathing a sigh of relief, Chen Hao slowly stepped out. Dressed in a Taoist robe, he quietly appeared in front of everyone in a nimble and silent way. Naturally, there was no noise at all. It was as if they were listening to the sound of the zither and the pulse of heaven and earth. His pitch-black eyes were like the deep and distant stars in the night sky. His long hair fluttered lightly in the wind. His tall and slender figure exuded an indescribable handsomeness and confidence. As the sound of the zither fell, the world fell silent. At this moment, Chen Hao's figure naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. It was only at this moment that everyone came back to their senses. They stared blankly at the little girl who had stopped playing the zither at some point in time, and walked to Chen Hao's side. She held Chen Hao's arm with a happy expression on her face. So handsome. There is actually such a handsome and beautiful man in the world. And such a beautiful woman with such a temperament? It's a match made in heaven. Only such a man is worthy of such a woman. But, which entertainment company are they from? How come I've never heard of such people? The Fengyun Corporation is indeed the #1 corporation. They actually secretly cultivated such a good-looking and elegant man and beautiful woman. I dare to bet that once these 2 people make their debut, they will definitely become the most popular celebrities today. No matter how good their acting skills are, just their looks and temperament are enough. They are really flawless. The buzz of discussion and undisguised praise were given to Chen Hao and Yi Xian. This made Chen Hao not know whether to laugh or cry. He had such an awesome aura, and it was almost as if he had stepped onto the stage with the rhythm of heaven and earth. But in the eyes of these mortals, he had become an artist with an aura and temperament. Fortunately, some of the spirits of all living things present at this moment revealed a serious expression. Chapter 1527. Their minds were captivated by Yi Xian's zither music that was in tune with the rhythm of heaven and earth. Chen Hao stepped on the rhythm of heaven and earth and the zither music, but under their watchful eyes, he appeared without the slightest bit of vigilance. Just these 2 points were enough to shock all of them. This was because many of them could sense that Chen Hao and Yi Xian had not even broken through the first layer of the earth's heavenly axiom's suppression. Especially Chen Hao. It could be said that he did not have any aura of the great path or energy. If he had not shown the ability to merge with heaven and earth, they would have regarded him as an ordinary person. Your godfather Li Yuan? Finally, someone broke the buzzing discussion of the crowd. Although his voice was not loud, it covered all the clamor, and was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. An expert. Almost instantly, the big shots present subconsciously came to a conclusion. Although they were all mortals, they were all knowledgeable people. If such a soft voice could be heard by everyone, what was the legendary martial arts expert? What the voice said made everyone present immediately shut their mouths. They followed the source of the voice and looked at the person who spoke. It was the new #1 expert of Bird Country, the second son of the head of the Fujita family, Fujita Shinaga. His cold gaze, unruly expression, his black hair fluttering even though there was no wind, and his invisible yet powerful aura. Everyone was shocked. They immediately followed Fujita Managa's gaze. Who else could it be other than the super handsome artist on the stage? He was Godfather Li Yuan? How could he be Godfather Li Yuan? Chen Hao on the stage answered. Everyone immediately denied Fujita Shinaga's words. Li Yuan, who had left more than 800 years ago, was older than Wang Zhong. How could he be the handsome young man on the stage who looked at most in his 20s? In their opinion, this was absolutely impossible. However, that's right, I'm Li Yuan. You're from Bird Country's Fujita family? What shocked everyone was that the handsome young man who they thought was impossible smiled at this moment and stared at Fujita Shinaga. His voice was also very soft, but it was as if it rang in everyone's ears. Such a situation and such an answer made Fujita Shinaga and the spirits of all creation frown again, feeling strange. Li Yuan, it really is Li Yuan. Furthermore, this Taoist robe is clearly no ordinary Taoist robe. He has stepped into the world of cultivation. However, this aura clearly hadn't even broken through the first layer of the heavenly Tao's suppression. How could it resonate with the heavens and earth just by relying on sound alone? Could it be that he is also a reincarnated spirit of all living beings? Yes, it must be. This is something that can be accomplished without relying on the slightest bit of energy. Only those who possess an extremely strong comprehension of the laws of the heavenly Tao can accomplish this. Spirit of all things, now that's interesting. Mu Qianshan, the strongest warrior of the Mu family, the ancient martial arts family of Wuxia, and Gaia, the direct descendant of the blood race, as well as many spirits of all things present, were all filled with fighting spirit at this moment. Fujita Managa. I'm very happy to meet the legendary godfather. I didn't expect us to be the same kind of people. It's a pity that you were born more than 800 years earlier and earned enough providence. Fortunately, you haven't even broken through the first layer of the heavenly Tao's suppression. Haha. If I'm not wrong, you must have been chased out of the world of cultivation, right? Managa, what nonsense are you talking about? Don't be rude to your godfather. Godfather, I'm Fujita Steel Gang, the current head of the Fujita family, my son. Father, you don't have to care about my affairs. You can't care about it anyway. Fujita Managa said lightly. As he spoke, he gently patted Fujita Steel Gang, who was beside him. Fujita Steel Gang's voice came to an abrupt halt, as if he could no longer say anything. Only his eyes widened, showing his frustration and helplessness. Unfortunately, he couldn't move an inch. Li Yuan, I only represent myself to challenge you. Whether you win or lose, it has nothing to do with the Fujita family. Although you have no chance of winning, I have to appease my father. He's old and timid. Whoosh! Fujita Managa's words caused an uproar. Wang Zhong was even more furious, but he was stopped by Chen Hao with a wave of his hand. The other souls of all creation were slightly excited, looking forward to what was about to happen. Fujita Managa taking the lead was no doubt something that many people were happy to see. Whether it was Li Yuan or the beautiful woman holding his arm, they felt that they weren't as simple as they seemed. The way they appeared seemed to be targeting them. Moreover, it seemed to be a show of strength. However, it didn't intimidate Fujita Managa, who was full of confidence. Fujita Steel Gang looked at his son in a daze. He was filled with emotions. Was he really old? He shook his head. He knew that he couldn't stop anything. Could his godfather, Li Yuan, really be provoked with brute force? If that was the case, why would the Fujita family have to wait until now? Unfortunately, at this point he was powerless to stop it. Do you think you're qualified to challenge me? Chen Hao was still smiling as he said lightly. We're the same kind of people. Of course I'm qualified. Is that so? Why should I agree to it? With your strength, you've only broken through one layer of suppression. Why do I need to do anything? I just need to give the order and you'll immediately disappear from this world. Oh, of course you won't really die. At most, you'll just be waiting for the next reincarnation. The power of the Fengyan Tower, even if it's just the power of technology, isn't something you can compete with. You have no guts. Fujita Managa was stunned. Guts? What do you mean by guts? It seems like you don't understand me at all. However, it seems like you still know that the power of my Fengyan group isn't something you can compete with for the time being. I'm curious. Why do you have to take such a risk and challenge me? You're asking the obvious. Hee, perhaps Brother Li really doesn't know. After all, Brother Li is the godfather. Before he stepped into the world of cultivation, he should have gathered enough luck. At this moment, Mu Qianshan from the Mu family of Wuxia smiled and said. The way he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his appearance filled with confidence, and the words he said, especially the way he addressed Li Yuan as brotherly, shocked all the important figures present. Even Elder Wang addressed Li Yuan as master. No matter what, the others had to address him as godfather. How could they dare to call him brother? Presumptuous. Wang Zhong finally couldn't bear it and exploded. Who do you think you are? How dare you call me brotherly? Even if your 100 generations of ancestors came over, they would still have to respectfully call me godfather. Bastard, you don't know what's good for you. You don't understand. Chi. To everyone's surprise, Mu Qianshan shook his head slightly. His hands behind his back suddenly stretched out and gently pointed at the Mu clan's lord. A magical stream of light went into the Mu clan's lord's forehead. Suddenly, just like Fujita's steel, the Mu clan's lord directly shut up and couldn't move. As for Wang Zhong, he just gave him a fierce look. Wang Zhong's eyes widened and he couldn't speak anymore. He even took a few steps back. Chapter 1528. What? What is this? Is this the legendary One Yang Finger, or the Six Meridians Divine Sword? Oh my god! Does such a skill really exist? This is incredible. Mu Qianshan is so powerful that he can control people from a distance. This is amazing. I'm afraid no one in this world can defeat him just by relying on force alone. Mu Qianshan's casual move shocked most of the mortals present. This should only be a magical skill that appeared on the screen and in novels. They didn't expect to see it with their own eyes. How could they not be shocked? This was even more shocking than flying in the air that they had heard of. With a light finger, it was as if an immortal light bloomed and controlled the enemy from a distance. Chen Hao narrowed his eyes slightly, but the smile on his face did not change. Just as he had expected, he deliberately avoided the battle, but his arrogant words had caused some people to lose their patience. Mu Qianshan was not the only one. While Mu Qianshan was speaking, Kea, a direct descendant of the blood race, who had only spent a year to be promoted to the 4th position in the mercenary world, stepped out of the crowd. Some of the spirits of all creatures, whose origins Chen Hao could not identify by their clothes and appearance, also stepped forward. Everyone's eyes were locked on Chen Hao and Yi Xian. Although they didn't say much, they were undoubtedly telling Chen Hao. So what if you're from the Fengyan group? If you dare to use the power of the Fengyan group to deal with us, we dare to join forces. Moreover, what made Wang Zhong so angry that he was trembling all over was that the leaders of many fields of the Fengyan Corporation were actually standing behind these spirits of all creation who jumped out to show hostility. What did this mean? It meant that the Fengyan group was torn apart under his nose, and there were traitors. More importantly, they were exposed at the moment when his master returned. Wang Zhong was so ashamed that he wanted to kill himself in front of his master to atone for his dereliction of duty. The matter of martial arts should be settled through a duel between warriors. You and I are the same kind of people, so you can't go against it. What do you say, Li Yuan, godfatherly? Fujita Managa, who had lost his composure, calmed down again at this moment. He smiled and looked at Chen Hao proudly. Beautiful lady, you're really beautiful. You're the most beautiful and elegant woman I've ever seen. Your music was so beautiful that it baptized my soul. Thank you for your divine music. My name is Kea, 24 years old, 2nd floor. I wonder if I can catch Mrs. I, so that we can practice martial arts together and improve together? Before Chen Hao could answer Fujita Managa's question, Gaia, who had already stepped forward, bowed slightly to Yi Xian and spoke with praise and devotion. When he finished speaking, he even reached out his hand to Yi Xian, as if he was waiting for the arrival of a goddess. 24 years old and 3 layers. The big shots in the secular world naturally didn't know what Gaia meant by 3 layers, but the spirits of all creatures present knew. The 2nd level was the 2nd level that had broken through the suppression of the heavenly Tao, and he was only 24 years old. This was undoubtedly an extremely shocking number for most of the spirits of all things. Crash. At this moment, the crowd lost control again and looked at Gaia in shock. Are all the young people nowadays crazy? This was the godfather of the mad scientist, Li Yuan, who was worshipped by the entire world. How could anyone dare to provoke him? Just by looking at how intimate Yi Xian and Chen Hao were, one could tell that Yi Xian was definitely Chen Hao's woman. What could be more humiliating than stealing someone's woman in front of them? Thank you for your honest words, but I really admire your courage. You dare to flirt with the woman of the killing god. Who in the world can save you? Ha! To everyone's surprise, Yi Xian, who was leaning against Chen Hao, said so. There was no trace of nervousness in her expression and tone. She looked at Gaia as if he was a pitiful person who was about to die. The killing god? Beautiful miss, you said he was the killing god? 68, that's quite a lot. Chen Hao's eyes slowly swept over the spirits of all creatures who had stepped out of the crowd. When he saw Gaia, he didn't stop for even half a second. His indifferent voice was still calm and aggressive, as if he wasn't afraid of their joint attack. Then he looked at Mu Qianshan and said, Mr. Sunset Light once taught me the essence of the ancient martial art, Baji Fist. So, I Li Yuan have always been kind to the Mu family. Chen Hao ignored Gaia's provocation. After Yi Xian finished speaking, she also ignored Gaia. Yi Xian had followed Chen Hao for so many years, so how could she not know what to do? Well said. There are new talents in every generation, and the new generation will surpass the old. No matter what, Brother Li is someone who has awakened for more than 800 years. Since you haven't even broken through the first layer, it seems that you are indeed more suited for science. However, this is no longer the era of science, Mu Qianshan said proudly. What you said before meant that to step into the world of cultivation, one needs to gather enough luck, right? So in order to gather enough luck as quickly as possible, you are all eyeing me, Li Yuan, as a big meal, right? The weak are prey to the strong. This is the most basic law of the world of cultivation. It was impossible for someone with the weakest strength to occupy the strongest destiny. The weak can only be the stepping stone of the strong. Li Yuan, let me tell you this. If you know what's good for you, fight us fair and square. We can guarantee that we won't take your life. That's right. In my opinion, since everyone has been exposed today, there is no need to hide anymore. Today, I announce to the world that in 3 days, the ranking battle will be broadcasted live all over the world. Li Yuan, you are just one of the participants. Of course, this girl is included. This is the best. In a fair battle, the strong will gather the strongest luck, and the weak will be at the back. Our goal is very simple, to step into the world of cultivation. Suddenly, several spirits of all creatures expressed their opinions. Okay. To everyone's surprise, Chen Hao agreed so easily. He said, However, I hope you have the strength to make me fight. Let me introduce you, I am his cultivation partner Yi Xian. Yi Xian interrupted Chen Hao and introduced herself. In 3 days, you are welcome to challenge me. I will accompany you. But today someone dared to flirt with me. How can my husband let it go? Hubby, don't you think so? Chen Hao was extremely speechless. This woman was obviously the kind of person who wanted to see the world in chaos. But since she had said it, Chen Hao really couldn't refuse. Moreover, Chen Hao's bottom line was indeed his woman. Although this woman was a little too much, but this brother really liked her. He didn't explode. He was such a responsible person. Humph, that's good. Gaia, who had been completely ignored, was angry. How could he bear it at this moment? With a cold snort, he appeared on the brightly lit stage like a ghost. That won't do. Don't forget that I, Fujita Managa, challenged him first. He is mine. Chapter 1529. He doesn't belong to anyone. Since we've agreed to fight in 3 days, how can we let you do it first? Miss Yi, please reconsider. Even if you want to teach Gaia a lesson, you can also agree to fight to the death in 3 days after the end of our ranking competition. Besides, this is the wind cloud building. It's not suitable. That's right. No one can do it first. We'll draw lots to decide. The competition between Gaia and Fujita Shinaga had caused dissatisfaction among the souls of all creatures. They all wanted to gain the most luck by stepping on Li Yuan. How could they let someone else do it first? Although Li Yuan was arrogant and made them feel that he was not simple, Li Yuan and his Taoist partner Yi Xian had not seen through as much as they did. This was the key to strength. We'll kill whoever dares to mess around first. The crowd reached a unified voice. Phew. It seems that you're all full of confidence, and you're all here for me. If that's the case, if I kill them now, I'm afraid you'll be scared. Well, little Yi, wait for 3 days and I'll vent my anger on you, Chen Hao said. Okay. Yi Xian smiled and did not insist. The people of the Wind Cloud Group will stay. The rest of you can do whatever you want. Oh, the traitors who have been bought over will stay too. Godfather, I'm sorry. Since we've made our choice, we can't stay. The Wind Cloud Group is destined to become a thing of the past. Yes. I'm sorry. The Wind Cloud Group has treated me well, but now I've found my true direction under the guidance of Master Gaia. Our mecha company has sworn to follow Master Gaia. If we want to leave, you can't stop us, unless you're willing to destroy the entire Wind Cloud building and everyone here. What do you say, Godfather? When Chen Hao told them to stay, all of the great figures who had betrayed the spirit of all things also shed all pretense of cordiality, and spoke without the slightest fear. Bastards, you're courting death. Wang Zhong, who could finally speak, suddenly activated a small smart chip in his hand. It's useless, Mr. Wang. Since we've chosen to leave, we've cracked the highest level control system hidden in all the chips. Therefore, the aircrafts and mechas we own now truly belong to us. Clatter. The mini smart chip in Wang Zhong's hand, which symbolized the highest control of the Wind Cloud Group, fell from his hand. His shocked expression showed that the other party's words were not wrong. The highest authority no longer belonged to him. Chi. But right then, Chen Hao blinked to Wang Zhong and caught the falling mini chip. Then he connected the sensor of the chip to Wang Zhong's brain. Immediately, rapid beeping sounds came out of the chip. Chi. Boom. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The protective mecha of the person who had spoken earlier actually activated on its own. He didn't have time to react at all. Or rather, it was useless to even react. The mecha protecting him had become the tool that ended his life. After activating, the mecha shrank and his head was crushed. After that, the mecha quickly moved behind Chen Hao like a soldier on standby. What about you guys? Chen Hao was still smiling. His eyes, which were as bright as the stars, swept across the faces of the big shots who had betrayed the Wind Cloud Group. At this moment, these big shots' faces were pale and their bodies were trembling. It was only at this moment that they suddenly realized that they had underestimated the mad scientist Li Yuan, who had left for too long and had almost been forgotten by them. It was only at this moment that they remembered the records about Li Yuan's arrogance, tyranny, and strength. No one dared to speak. Those who are not convinced can choose to leave. But I, Li Yuan, can guarantee that you will end up like him. Here, on Earth, there is nothing that I, Li Yuan, cannot do. It was so 800 years ago, and it is still so today, 800 years later. Chen Hao's voice resounded in the dead silent hall. At this moment, no one doubted Chen Hao's ability in science. After 800 years, no one knew how much progress he had made in this field. In just a split second, he had taken control of the core system. What kind of concept was that? In today's world, any important technological equipment and weapons could not be lacking in the shadow of the Wind Cloud Group. The current smart brain system could be said to be completely based on Li Yuan's previous research results. Although there was progress, it was very limited. In such a situation, who could guarantee that it would not be controlled by the hidden system? As long as Li Yuan was willing, he might be able to control all the technological products in the world with smart systems. That was to control the world. This was a very scary thing, but it was the truth. Just based on Li Yuan's ability to break through all the smart defense programs in minutes and have absolute control over them, it made everyone understand that the Godfather was still the Godfather. In terms of technology, no one could beat him. He was #1 in the world. I've thought of this a long time ago. My Guardian mech didn't use any of the company's spare parts. Even the AI system was completed separately. Every program was coded by me personally. At most, I only borrowed a little from you. I'd like to see how you can control me. At this moment, The number one person in the military aircraft company number 7 finally made a choice after hesitating for a long time. Is that so? Chi. Chen Hao asked softly. As soon as he finished speaking, the person's protective mecha activated on its own amidst the exclamations of the crowd and his horrified and stunned expression. Crack ah. Immediately after, his arms and legs were deformed. The clear sound of bones breaking could be heard. The person also let out a shrill scream. Thump. Under the shocked gaze of the crowd, he knelt in the direction of Chen Hao. Not to mention that you're just a smart system. Even if you're a sentient intelligence, you won't be able to escape my control. Chen Hao's calm voice was filled with arrogance. This was his domain, especially on Earth. Even though he had left for more than 800 years, the smart system here had not deviated from the standards and knelt down that he had set. All the rules were under his control. No, don't kill me. I was forced to do this. Is that so? If other people said this, I might believe them. But since you've stood up and thought of this day, you're worthy of suspicion. Moreover, I've never cared about feelings. Bang! There was a fresh head that bloomed. Who else wants to try? Chi. For a moment, many of the traitors scrambled to take off the protective mecha on their bodies, abandoning it as if it were a pair of worn-out shoes. They were afraid that the cold-blooded godfather would control them and wipe them out. Enough, Li Yuan. These are just ordinary people's tricks. No matter how good you are at it, you can only control ordinary people. 3 days later we'll see. I hope you won't break your promise. It's right in front of the forbidden city of Wuxia. Is that okay? Chapter 1530. The final battle before the Forbidden City? That's good too. Chen Hao smiled faintly, completely unaffected. A bunch of trash. After receiving Chen Hao's affirmation, the spirits of all living things left without any hesitation. Some of them even cursed at the traitors of the Fengyan group who had pledged loyalty to them, abandoning them as if they were worn-out shoes. Little Wang, you handle it yourself. I've already set the highest authority for your personal brain. Yes, Master. Master, are you not going to take over? Little Wang. I'm afraid I can't live for more than a few days. Being able to wait for Master's return in this life. Little Wang has no regrets. Wang Zhong's old eyes were filled with tears. The greatest spiritual strength that had supported him until now was to wait for Master's return and guard the Fengyan group for Master. And now Master had returned. Despite today's chaos, it didn't cause any serious consequences. He had no regrets and could go with peace of mind. He could clearly feel the aging of life. Although he was in high spirits, he knew that this was because of Master's return and his mood. It was just a momentary recovery of spirit. Can't live for many years? There's no problem living for another 1,000 years, even if you don't do anything. Well, the Fengyan group is my blood, sweat, and tears. Although I can't spend my energy on it, the people of the world still need it. Just treat it as fulfilling my responsibility. Master, are you serious? I can live for another 1,000 years? Wang Zhong was shocked. He knew very well what kind of person Master was. Since he said such a thing, he must have the ability to do it. However, this was too unbelievable. Even if he trusted Master, he couldn't help but ask in shock. After a while, I will modify your genes. Chen Hao smiled and threw Wang Zhong's personal brain chip to him. He issued another command and a window slowly opened. At this moment, Chen Hao pulled Yi Xian over and jumped down. Ah! Countless people in the hall, including Wang Zhong, screamed. They all opened their mouths and rushed to the floor-to-ceiling window at the edge of the hall. Wang Zhong was no exception. They didn't think that Chen Hao and Yi Xian would commit suicide. However, although this was not the top floor, it was still the 81st floor. If there were Guardian Mecha activated, it would still make sense. However, Chen Hao and Yi Xian were clearly not wearing any Guardian Mecha. He can fly. According to the legends, he is a mutant who can fly with his physical body. This was the first judgment that appeared in the minds of most people. Although they were not flying, they were not far from it. Everyone saw that Chen Hao and Yi Xian seemed to be completely unaffected by the Earth's gravity. After reaching a certain speed, there was no acceleration. In the end, they slowly and gently landed on the ground like cotton fluttering in the wind. Master. The returned master. What kind of existence is he? Wang Zhong was so excited that his beard trembled. Once, because of Li Yuan, his fate had changed drastically. He went from an unknown person to a person who controlled the entire Fengyan group and could shake the earth with a stomp of his feet. Unfortunately, no matter how glorious his life was, it would eventually be submerged in the merciless years. He was old and could clearly feel himself aging year by year. He also understood more and more why his master chose to pursue the almost absurd matter of immortality after stepping onto the peak of various fields of science. Now his master had returned. He was so young, like a 20-year-old young man. Moreover, he who was on the verge of death had no problem living for another 1,000 years. His fate was destined to change again because of his unfathomable master. How could he not be excited? This day was destined to be a day that shocked the world. Godfather Li Yuan returned like a young man with a peerless beauty. The upper management of Fengyan Group was shaken and reshuffled. The young masters of the world's most famous martial arts families and forces challenged Godfather Li Yuan for a decisive battle in front of the Forbidden City 3 days later. Under the deliberate publicity of many participants, the news spread all over the world in less than half an hour. Many media outlets reported vividly. Photos and videos of Chen Hao, Yi Xian, and others appeared, shocking the world. Countless people with power and money rushed to the capital of Wuxia as soon as possible because everyone knew that if they were late, they might not have a chance. In fact, it was true. In less than half a day, the entire capital was overcrowded. If the Wuxia military hadn't intervened in front of the Forbidden City, it would have been crowded with people who had occupied the seats in advance. And the entire capital had to be under martial law when the population reached its peak. Of course, Chen Hao and Yi Xian didn't care about all this. The two of them only used the subtle control of their muscles to easily change their appearances. They shuttled through the bustling food streets of the capital and tasted all kinds of delicacies. They didn't have the worries of being full or poisoned like ordinary people. As cultivators, it was rare for them to have an appetite. And Chen Hao, who had just returned to Earth, more or less felt like he was looking for his past. Therefore, he ate heartily, ignoring the surprise and dissuasion of all the bosses. It couldn't be helped. The bosses were afraid that the two of them would die from eating too much. As for the duel 3 days later, Chen Hao and Yi Xian did not take it too seriously after seeing the spirits of all things. It was impossible to say that they did not feel any pressure at all. However, in their opinion, it was impossible for those people to suppress the two of them. The reason was simple. These spirits of all creatures had their own realms. Because of the suppression of the heavenly Tao, although they had broken through the first, second, and even third level and awakened to the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, their physical bodies were too weak due to the lack of heaven and earth spirit qi. More importantly, they couldn't use the heaven and earth spirit qi at all. They could only use the heaven and earth spirit qi that they had extracted from some special items and medicines. This was too pitiful for Chen Hao and Yi Xian. Yi Xian already had the ability to open up her mind space. How much energy had her mind space devoured from Chen Hao? It could only be described as immeasurable. Even the energy of a true immortal king could not compare to it. The reason was simple. Chen Hao's terrifying mind space was not something ordinary people could compare to. The Tao manifestation immortal fruit tree, the tree of life, and the spirit spring sea had grown to this day and had become a part of Chen Hao's life. It could be said that they had absorbed a terrifying amount of energy. And Yi Xian's Hongming indestructible body could be said to be the strongest physique. In addition to its existence, it had almost devoured all of Chen Hao's energy. Chapter 1531. At night, Chen Hao and Yi Xian finally returned to the wind and cloud building after a day of eating at the Crazy Sea. On the top floor, in Chen Hao's room. This was all left behind by you? Yi Xian looked at the walls, floor, and ceiling in disbelief. They were densely packed with words and diagrams related to Taoism, Buddhism, the 100 schools of thought, and ancient martial arts cultivation. There were also ancient scrolls, books, antiques, and other items scattered all over the room. Why is it so messy? No one can enter my room. It's been more than 800 years. Chen Hao looked at the messy room and slowly swept his eyes over the traces he had left behind. He felt surprisingly comfortable. Every word and pattern on the walls, floor, and ceiling reminded him of the mood and state he was in when he was immersed in thinking about something. This long-lost feeling was like reliving an old dream. He saw himself, who had once worked crazily in pursuit of immortality. Now, although those understandings and research had become quite childish and ridiculous in his eyes, it brought Chen Hao a different kind of enlightenment. After more than 800 years, even with the special materials and strong protection of the wind and cloud building, his private forbidden area was covered with a faint layer of fine dust. However, it still retained the appearance of when he left for the last time. No one dared to touch his room, especially the wind and cloud building, which was his forbidden area. Whenever he was immersed in it, it was when he was studying and solving problems, and no one was allowed to disturb him. Even Wang Zhong could not disturb him. Moreover, the words and patterns that seemed to be scribbled casually here were the products of his inspiration. Therefore, even though Chen Hao had been gone for more than 800 years, Wang Zhong, who firmly believed that his master would return, had never touched this place. Then, where did you enjoy the beauties that little Wang chose for you? Yi Xian suddenly asked. Chen Hao, who was already immersed in reminiscing the past and experiencing the journey in his heart, was directly shocked by Yi Xian's bold and unconstrained thinking. Oh, I mean in the past. Now with me, your wife here, you naturally won't have anything to do with those vulgar beauties, right? Although I won't forbid you from messing around. At this moment, 10,000 curses flew through Chen Hao's mind uncontrollably, but in the end he just shook his head and stared at Yi Xian. Next door. The door is open. Wash up and wait on the bed. You wish. I don't want a place where other women have slept. In my opinion, this place is not bad. Although it's as messy as a pigsty, these scribbles are very interesting. Haha, what a cute idea. What about me? Is Cao with you? I was just speaking the truth. This is a Taoist scripture? As Yi Xian spoke without the slightest trace of politeness, she suddenly looked at an ancient book she had casually picked up in surprise. It was unknown what material the thread-like ancient book was made of. Even though it was suppressed by the heavenly law, Yi Xian still felt a mysterious and strange fluctuation when she touched it. The words Tao Scripture were written on its cover. Yes, the scripture recorded in this book should be the real one, that hasn't been simplified. That supreme-grade yellow rosewood chair and this book were both found in an ancient cave deep in the mountains. I wasn't able to study the material of this book back then, but now it seems that it should be condensed from an ancient almighty ability. What, do you feel that it's special? Chen Hao frowned. He had once spent a lot of effort to study this ancient book, but unfortunately, he didn't find anything. Now he already knew that the yellow rosewood chair was extraordinary and contained a world within a world. It was just that he was temporarily suppressed by the heavenly law and was unable to open it. Therefore, when Yi Xian picked up this book, Chen Hao thought that this book couldn't be simple. After all, it and the yellow rosewood chair both came from that cave, so how could it be simple? Touch it. Chen Hao stretched out his hand to catch it. Rumble. The instant Chen Hao caught the ancient book, his body suddenly shook, and a rumble that resounded through the heavens and the earth resounded in his mind. Chi 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 chi. Immediately after, something even more shocking happened. The space between Chen Hao's brows and every pore on his body emitted a dazzling golden light at this moment. In an instant, it formed golden characters that revolved around Chen Hao's body. Yi Xian widened her eyes in shock. Chen Hao also looked at the golden characters that revolved around him in shock and muttered, "The outline of the Great Path. My outline of the Great Path actually came from here? Isn't it because of you? This is the outline of the Great Path. I always thought it was because of it. You mean this ancient book?" "Yes, it's this ancient book. Your suppression," Yi Xian said in surprise when she sensed Chen Hao's aura. "It's gone for now. Fuck. You've almost devoured all my energy. Quickly open up the space in your mind and absorb some for me. It's urgent." and take out the chair's armrest. Chen Hao said hurriedly. All right. Although Yi Xian didn't know what exactly happened, the aura on Chen Hao's body seemed to have completely broken through the heavenly Tao's suppression. Perhaps it was because of the ancient book, so she opened up the space in her mind without any hesitation. In the next moment, the space between Chen Hao's brows was like a tentacle probing into Yi Xian's brows. In an instant, it devoured a large amount of heaven and earth spirit qi, including the immortal qi of the immortal world. However, Chen Hao had only been devouring for less than 10 seconds. His hands suddenly moved quickly, forming a series of mysterious and ancient runes. He imprinted them on the armrest of the chair that Yi Xian had taken out. If I don't come out in 3 days, bombard the armrest with heaven and earth spirit qi and call me. Chen Hao suddenly said. Buzz. In the next moment, before Yi Xian could say anything, he turned into a stream of light and entered the chair's armrest. The entry point he entered was where Chen Hao's fingers flicked. I'm going in. Bring me along, bastard. You can clearly do it, but you actually made my wife protect me. Emph. After being stunned for a moment, Yi Xian stomped her feet like a little girl and said in a huff. She knew very well that Chen Hao had entered the world within a world, and it was definitely condensed by an ancient almighty. As for how big it wasn't something she knew. Under such circumstances, Chen Hao could totally bring her in, but now, she had become an alarm clock protector. I'll deal with you when you come out. Yi Xian's gaze once again fell on the words, scribbles, and items in Chen Hao's room. She immediately became excited again. Seeing these, she felt very good. It was as if she was watching Chen Hao make a fool of himself. It was an extremely cute way of thinking, however. She knew that if she stood in the perspective of a mortal, it was absolutely inconceivable to have such thoughts and deductions. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.